Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone. Well, tonight on Tales from SYL Ranch, we have our live call-ins via Skype. We are also going to talk a bit about the 2020 Democratic National Convention, which is turning out to be cringier than a sideshow, and a heck of a lot less interesting. Going to talk about a Maryland teacher who was ratting out a student when she noticed that the student had a BB gun on their wall during a Zoom session. I mentioned a little bit about Nichelle Nichols. She's got a GoFundMe because her family is alleging some elderly abuse. I will give you the weekly virus stuff for Lancaster County, Nebraska, where I live, and talk about how ridiculous that is. Mention briefly Netflix's new softcore kiddie porn, Cuties, which is just horrifying. I'll talk a little bit about Star Trek Lower Decks, and one episode that came out today, and how it continues to be interesting. This is, of course, a live stream, so even if I can't get to you in Skype, if you don't call me there, you can always talk with me on chat about anything that you want to. You can ask me any question, whether it's political, social, the virus, whose name I cannot mention without getting my YouTube videos and channel lower ranked even than it already is. The ongoing terrorist attacks, I think we're in night 83 of that throughout the United States. Systemic racism against African Americans, if it exists, or things pertaining to science fiction, fantasy, horror, superhero, and other related genres. I'm happy to answer each and every question in as much detail and as truthfully as I can. There are some personal things that I won't talk about, but everything else, pretty much fair game. I will get to as many of my viewers as humanly possible, with the understanding that this thing, I don't really want it to go any longer than about 3 hours, because that kind of takes it out of this old body to go much longer than that. If you'd like to call into the show, I'm doing that with Skype, but since I don't want to give out tons of Skype information of my own in public, I would handle it this way if I could. If you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email to callin@sylranch.tv. Give me your Skype information, I will Skype you back. You will then be free to talk with me about anything that you want. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me, whatever you want to do. So again, if you're interested in talking with me directly, send me an email at callin@sylranch.tv with your Skype information, and I will Skype you back. That number again is callin@sylranch.tv. So, looks like we got a couple of people on. Thanks. Nice to see you all here tonight. Always love my audience. Oh man, I might as well just start out mentioning the Democratic National Convention. Oh my God. What a cringe fest. I mean, just a cringe fest. I can't even watch it. I mean, I should be watching it. I do, political commentary. I should be watching this, but I can't. And here's why. My longtime viewers will know that a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was once an actor. And in that capacity, I've both been in and watched some shows and performances and stuff where it's just so cringy that you feel embarrassed. And you don't feel embarrassed for what's going on. You feel embarrassed for the performer, right? Oh, God, that's how the Democratic National Convention is going for me when I turn it on. It's like watching and just being embarrassed for the people, for what they're doing, what's going on. It's just like, cringe moment after cringe moment after cringe moment. Just like, good God, why? Why, please, why? I don't even know what to say about it. Dalton asks, could I do Zoom instead of Skype? It's not a bad idea. I can't tonight because I'd have to change things around to do it. But I'll think about that for next week. I always like to take suggestions, so if that'll help you call in, that'd be great. I'll pick up some Zoom if I can. But I can't do it tonight. That means doing a lot of reconfiguration on the fly, and I'd probably have to mess with things, and I usually like to try to test things in advance because you never know if you're suddenly going to get like a massive feedback echo or something like that. So, but oh God, is this convention so cringy? And they're picking up, other people are picking up stuff that I'm not. I think last night or something, Elizabeth Warren was speaking. Was it Elizabeth Warren, or I don't know. Maybe it was Kamala Harris, but somebody speaking, and they had because it's all virtual. They had like 30 images in behind her of people who were watching her speak, and one of the images was put up there 3 different times. So it was supposed to be 30 different people watching, but one person was in there like 3 different times. Man, that's bad. That's really bad. When you can't get 30 people, I mean, you could have called, just sent a tweet out that said we need 30 people to come up here on Skype or Zoom or whatever the hell there is you're using it with, and we just going to put you in the background. All you have to do is stare at your camera and look excited. That's all you have to do. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. The incompetence, the sheer incompetence. You just go, what? And again, it's hard for me to watch. It's just hard for me to watch. As a former actor, it is just hard to watch because it's just watching and being embarrassed for the people on there, for the performers. Because that's all you can think of when they're doing something like this. It's like they're being performers. It's the same as me coming on here. I have a certain degree of presentation, clearly, that I do. And I'm sort of performing, I mean, like I get up before I do this, I do vocal warm-ups. I try as much as possible to keep my normal, everyday, Midwestern Nebraska accent out. I do what's called a general American accent as much as I can. And I get this all prepped before I go and all these things. So, I mean, I'm doing a level of performance. It's just not much. Right now I'm just rattling on because I didn't prepare anything about this stupid convention. What could you prepare, when you're basically saying this is embarrassing to watch for the performers? So, I mean, they get up there, and these are people who are used to doing performances, but they're in front of crowds. That's how your average, thing goes. You're in front of a crowd. You get this feedback. If you're good at working the crowd, you're kind of moving them around with what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're presenting yourself. And yet, when they get them down and they're just inside of an empty studio with some cameras pointed at them, because that's really all they are, then they don't know what to do. There's no crowd to work. You don't have this feedback. It's the difference between doing stage work and doing film work if you're an actor, right? If you're doing stage work, it's a single take. You are getting back and forth from your audience. They're reacting to what your performance is. And, good actors, they can pick up on that and manipulate it around just a little bit. But then you get into, work in film or TV or streaming now. And, you're dealing with a camera, and it's a performance that's, not really for anyone exactly. You're acting between 2 different people or several people, and the camera is essentially catching you doing it. So there's no back and forth with that audience. Well, these politicians, they're used to grandstanding and whatnot, and getting up in front of people and they're pulling crowd and working them. And then they get them in here, and it's like switching from theater to TV and film work, and they don't know what to do. They're just lost. They're completely lost. And so it just gets cringy. It just gets really, really cringy. As I say, I feel sorry for the performers because they're doing cringe, and they don't. It's like Plan 9 from Outer Space in a way. Plan 9 from Outer Space is classic, so bad that it's good. You don't feel sorry for the performers because it's terrible, but they're giving it their all. I mean, the people who are making those, when they make so bad it's good movies like that, it's not like you're trying to make a bad movie. You are working. You're trying to make something good. It's just that it's completely beyond your ability to do good, and so it's so bad it's good, and that's funny. But then there's ones where like this, they're just you don't know what to say except I am embarrassed for them. I'm not the whole shebang is ridiculous and stupid, and what they have not figured out, right? There doesn't look like there's any energy behind it. It doesn't look like there's anybody who really cares about it. And that's because, again, you don't have this back and forth with the audience. Our friends over at Comic-Con have figured this out. They did a virtual Comic-Con. I think they may have done more than one, where they'll have panels, people who are standing there and doing panel work, and you're just like, okay, what you don't understand is these virtual panels don't work, and they have very low view counts, and they're very cringy to watch. And that's because what they don't understand is the appeal of Comic-Con and any convention like that is being able to go and meet the people that, are making the stuff that you enjoy. And when you're not meeting them, when you're not sitting there in a crowd of people, and again, it's sort of a stage thing, right? You have a group of people in a big ballroom, and you're getting this back and forth in person with the people that you enjoy, or that are making the stuff that you enjoy, and it's a lot of fun then. When you just got some people sitting around on Zoom, it's not that much fun. You don't have that in-person, oh, good, I get to, maybe have an opportunity to say hi to them, raise my hand and ask a question of them, maybe get an autograph with them afterwards and, kind of drool and fanboy. That's all gone. And it's no fun anymore. It's not fun. So nobody's watching. And that's what's happened with virtual Comic-Con. Well, they're finding out the hard way with the Democratic National Convention that it's the same thing. The thrill for people going to that convention is being in a big crowd and being able to cheer on your guy. It's the difference between a sporting event, watching football on TV, watching the Super Bowl, as opposed to being at the Super Bowl, in person. I'm not a big sports guy, but I have on 2 occasions gone to a couple of professional sports games, right? I went once long ago, both of them, long ago when I was living in Chicago. Got a chance to go see the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan. They were playing Miami, who was a brand new nobody team franchise at the time. And so Jordan didn't come out much at all. You knew it was just, they're going to cream him. But he came out for like 5 minutes, right? And did his thing. He just destroyed everyone. I mean, it was going to be a no-brainer anyway, so they left him back in the locker room most of the time. But he came out for like 5 minutes. That was a real thrill, watching Michael Jordan for 5 minutes. That was great. Went and saw the Chicago, was it the Black Sox or whatever the South Side thing was, and they were at New Comiskey Park. And that thing, we had seats that were up a neat nosebleed section, and you had really drunk people around us, and that was not very fun. But it was a professional sports team. Not much into sports, but occasionally, I've gone to like farm team games for baseball, right? Des Moines, when I lived there, they're the farm team for the Chicago. God, what am I blanking on it? We're Chicago, one of the Chicago teams up there. Blanking on it. Anyway, that's kind of fun because again, it's a small venue to start with, and you're pretty close to the game, and those are reasonably fun, even for somebody that's not much into baseball. I liked those. Going out for those usually as part of something to do with our like a work outing or something like that. That was pretty fun. But again, you get into this thing with the conventions, and that's where it's a big crowd. You want to be able to cheer your guy on. You want to be able to see them there in person. They want to be able to have the back and forth with you because that's what they're used to doing when they're giving these speeches. And you get them up there, and it's just, Zoom and YouTube, and who cares? It's not that interesting anymore. You're not sitting with a bunch of people who all have the same mindset. It's just a complete waste of time. And again, watching them, it's like, seeing somebody who's been doing nothing but theater work suddenly thrown into doing work with maybe a bad movie or TV production. And they don't really get the change. They don't know what needs to be different. They're expecting this audience to be there, and it's not, and it looks terrible. And it's just, for me, it's cringy to watch them. I feel embarrassed for them. Not for the politics or anything like that. That's totally side note in this one. It's just I'm embarrassed for the people involved. It's just that bad. Hey, Jeanette. Good to see the world hasn't made my head explode yet. Anyway, well, give me a little time here. This Democratic National Convention, I can't take it seriously. I can't watch it because I am embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for the people who are up front doing things. They look lost. They look like they're giving poor theatrical performances. And I was never a great actor. I hopefully was not in something anybody looked at me and go, oh God, oh, I just feel embarrassed for Bill. I hope something like that didn't happen. I know I was in a production one time of The Odd Couple where one of the leads was horribly miscast. Pretty bad actor. And but the thing was, he was bankrolling a bunch of the production, so he got to do what he wanted. But he was one of those guys where, as a performer on stage, you're just kind of like, oh, I feel embarrassed for you, and this is like that. I just feel embarrassed for them. I can't even critique their politics. I just feel embarrassed for them. It's just horrifying. Marshall says, hi, Marshall. This has to be the first convention that gave a poll bump to the opposing candidate. Yeah. It's the difference between going to, I mentioned earlier, I don't know if you heard it, but it's the difference between going to Comic-Con in person and, being able to interact, even with it's something that I hate, like some of the Star Trek stuff that's come up. Being in a room full of people and being able to interact with the stars or the producers or the writers or whomever, and having this crowd with you and kind of having that energy, and having the virtual Comic-Con and having, the Star Trek Discovery panel and having it just be a bunch of people on Skype and watching it on YouTube, and you're just like, this is not interesting to me, because it's not that crowd. It's not that. It's a shared experience. It's as I said, the difference between theater and in terms of, being a performer and motion picture. You have a shared experience in a theater. You have a shared experience when you have a big crowd of people like that. You take that away and it's boring, And so Marshall says that you're giving a bump to the opposing candidate because they're watching this. And as I say, for me, it's so cringy that I'm feeling bad for the people who are doing the performance. I just feel bad. It's one of those things where you just... my only reaction is like, oh my God, oh, it's uncomfortable. I don't like, click away, because I can't, after a while, I can't stand to watch it. I have not watched I've watched maybe 20 minutes of the whole shebang, and it's all just, oh God, oh, I feel uncomfortable. I feel bad for you. What you're doing up here is so awful. I feel bad. And click away. I can't stand to watch it. It's not even the politics. It's just the performance. I can't stand to watch it. Jeanette says they do deserve sympathies, poor babies. Okay, that's enough. Marshall says not just that, the production values. Oh, yeah, our 10th grade class. That's absolutely true. Yes, the production values are terrible. And that's been cruel to 10th grade class. These people don't know how to use the internet at all. Yeah. You might take it and say, okay, it's not on YouTube anymore, and parts of it are now up on the Internet Archive. I have a long-term project to get everything I've ever done related to this show on the Internet Archive. And if you watch some of my early stuff, and Marshall was around for that, and I feel bad about it. If you watch some of my early stuff, I had poor production values. I didn't have the lighting. I didn't have the green screen. I didn't have the stuff going on underneath me. I would sometimes be way too close to the camera. And you learn as you go. But these guys should have hired people that know how to do this. You could have called me. You could have called me and I'd have made a better job out of this in terms of the production values. It's terrible. It really is bad. It's just a cringe fest. It's just a cringe fest all the way through. It's amazing. It's just amazing. But, the other part about it is, of course, the politics. And I got into it. I don't know why I let myself be baited. I got into it because I saw something. You have to understand, I'm not a fan of George Takei's politics. George Takei is the guy who originally played Sulu in Star Trek, the original series and the original series cast movies. And I'm not a fan of his politics at all. But I met the guy in person in 1979 at a convention, and I was very young. At 79, I would have been 14. I was young, and what happened was we were standing in line to do autographs, and for one reason or another, my mother took me to Omaha, which is about 45 miles away, and we had to leave. We just had to go. I think it was like going on some kind of vacation or something like that. We had to get out. And I was like, no, Mom, no, I want to stay and get his autograph. And so my mom, not being starstruck, Trekkie like me, just walks up to George and says, hey, we got to go. Can my son cut in line? And George said, of course. And so he let me cut in line, and, my mom had explained we'd come, 45 miles to see him, which is no big deal if you're from, California, Southern California. Bit of a bigger deal around here. And he said, I never forget it. He said, it's because of fans like you that Star Trek is coming back. You say that to a starstruck, 14-year-old Trekkie, you're going to walk out of there going, wow, I can't believe I was part of something great, And so I have always had a really soft spot in my heart for the man. He knows that Star Trek is why he has what success he has had. He's kind to his fans. He's also completely off the deep end, in terms of going for the Democrat. He's one of those people that suffers seriously from Trump derangement syndrome. If Trump wins again, which seems ever more likely to me at this point in time, he's going to be one of those people that has some kind of serious psychotic break. Because they're going to do that. It's going to be a serious psychotic break of some kind. If Trump wins again, the Democrats and the liberals are going to go nuts. I don't remember how I let myself get baited into having a conversation with one of the people in a thread on his Twitter. They're impossible to communicate with. They're totally impossible to communicate with. I would keep saying things like, I'm a libertarian. I'm not really a Trump supporter. And they'd say, oh, you're God Trump. And I'm like, no, Trump is not my God. I'm a libertarian. If I had my way this time around, I'd be voting for Joe Jorgensen. In point of fact, I probably won't. But that's a whole other thing. I said, no, I'm not really a Trump supporter. It's more like default more than anything else. And they were just on me and ragging, and there's a whole bunch of them, and just, oh, you really love Trump, and oh, he's done all this and he's done all that, and he's put his son in this thing, and I'm like, hey, you guys, all of these positions, in government, they always get them because of political favors or nepotism, or he's not doing anything right now that hasn't happened in the past. I mean, look at JFK and RFK. His brother, what was his brother doing in the JFK administration? And it happens all the time, and they can't, no, it's because you love Trump. And I'm like, no, it's not. I really don't. They're impossible to communicate with because they assume that if you are in anything other than loving the Democrat, then you must, love everything about Trump and everything he does. It's just impossible to have any useful kind of conversation with him. Hey, Supercruise63, hi, nice to see you. You and me both, Bill. You've been doing interactive internet streaming since 1999. Yeah, well, hell, Marshall, I'm the first one to say that, it's largely a lot of your ideas that have gotten my production values the way that they are. Had you not done things like suggesting lower thirds and stuff like that, I wouldn't have even thought to put them in. It's easy to do with the software, open broadcast software, but wouldn't have never thought of it. Same with the scrolling part on the lower third. Jeanette says, I could have done better and I can barely do this. Oh, yeah, God, it's just pathetic. It's just pathetic. As I say, for me, as somebody who used to be an actor, it's watching them and being embarrassed. And, just like, it's a physical reaction. Oh, man. Oh, I can't watch this anymore. I am so embarrassed for these people. I'm embarrassed for them as a performer being up and doing this and looking so bad, Marshall says, hard to believe that Trump is a more classical liberal than the left is now. That's when my head started his explosive restart. Yeah. Trying to communicate with him it's a pointless waste of time. The last three sets of them I have, I hate to even get into it. Maybe I will just for kicks, because you can see the last three sets. Drop of Truth says, hey, Bill. Hey, folks, from a cold, gray, miserable day in Australia. It was a pretty nice day here. I think it got up to about 85 degrees, which is not horrible, but there was some pretty bad humidity, so it felt a lot worse than that. But hey, I never go outside anyway, so I went out to get some prescription medications, and that was about all. Let me see what the last bit of this craziness was. Let's see. Excuse me. We're talking about how Democrats did not accept the results of the 2016 election. Because let's be real, they didn't. They didn't accept the results of the 2016 election. So I said, well, considering that the Democrats didn't accept the results of the 2016 election, let me move this up so it looks like I'm more looking at you. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do if they lose in 2020. And I said, because let's be real, a senile old white dude and his diversity hire aren't going to have the slightest chance. And I think that's probably true. Guy comes back and says, your God, Trump, is the one saying mail-in ballots are and have always been fraudulent. So I guess all of those Republican who were voted in by mail-in ballots they're fraudulently and need to be removed from office. See how stupid Trump and his followers are. I replied back, Trump is not my God. I'm a libertarian and atheist, not a Trump supporter. What I'm not is someone incapable of dealing with objective reality. And your statements about what Trump has said are factually inaccurate. And they are factually inaccurate. Comes back. Libertarian and atheist neither deals with any form of reality or intelligence. And I just went back and I said, well, they're totally unrelated, of course. I was just clarifying my position because it was mischaracterized. Guy comes back. I wasn't using God in the religious sense, but in supporting someone who has no matter what they say or do, that clearly is what you expressed. And I said back to him, I understood what you meant, as you no doubt understood what I meant by my reply. For some bizarre reason, you choose to disbelieve that I'm not a Trump supporter. Since you won't believe what you're told, it's impossible to have a useful conversation. He comes back. You can whine and complain all you want, but your words tell a different story. You need to lay off whatever drug is clouding your brain. So I just go back. And this is what I usually tell people when they've gone nuts and are starting to completely miss everything that I've said. I said, you're overlaying your own emotional connotations onto my words. I write very precisely. Read only the meanings of my words. If I want to convey something emotional, I will. In general, and this is true, by the way, if you're reading anything that I'm writing, in general, it's a good idea to read my words in the voice of Spock from Star Trek, the Nimoy version. You can't have a rational conversation with them. They'll say things that you believe that you never said you believed, and it just gets insane. It gets crazy. Drop of Truth asks, how did the political parties in the U.S. get the donkey and the elephant? You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer how that came about. It's something they've had for at least like a century. I'm not sure where it comes from, to be perfectly honest. Super Cruise 63, going to talk about that a little bit. I might not believe all the smoke and fire here up in the central coast of California. Fires everywhere up in North California. Super Cruise 63. I'm going to have a plug today for Nichelle Nichols' GoFundMe. But if you know of any good charity up that direction, shoot me an email to callin@sylranch.tv just so that I can look at it and maybe push that next week, because I am on seeing if we can't help some people out even with my smallish audience. So if you get something good you know of as a good charity, let me know and I'll try to push that. Marshall says, odd that the Postal Service itself says never to send cash through the mail because it's not secure. Cash is not as valuable as a vote, ergo not secure enough. Yeah. Dalton says at least people are already wearing masks. That's true. Dropper 2 says, living in Australia, I know all about large bushfires. Is it like night in the daytime yet? Well, this is like the second year in a row, I think. Super Goose 63 can correct me. This is like the second year in a row that they've had really horrifying wildfires up there. Not that it's unusual. I mean, from my perspective, as somebody that's half a continent away and have nothing to do with it, I see these reports from time to time, every couple of 3 years, about massive rain and water slides and mudslides and stuff, sort of almost interspersed with, droughts and wildfires. So I know this is like the second year in a row that it's been really horrifying. But that is the Super Cruise 63. It says, well, let's say the sun has been orange and you can actually look at it like heavy fog. Yeah, I kind of figured. Yeah. Closest I've come to that was a number of years ago. There was a fire in Yellowstone, which is several hundred miles away from me. I'm still within the radius of what would happen if the Yellowstone caldera blew, but you don't. It's not usually anything you care about. But they had this huge fire there, and these clouds started turning. I mean, the sunset started turning orange, and after a while, the cloud cover itself came over Lincoln, Nebraska, which is, again, hundreds of miles away. It's two whole states, large states away. So not huge like Texas, but pretty large away. I guess if you put it together, you'd say, okay, it's about the distance that Texas is across at its widest point. That's how far we're talking about. So that smoke went hugely across the parts of the country, but nothing like it is in California, I'm sure. So let me talk briefly, getting off of these poor, embarrassing schmucks who have screwed it up so bad that they've given Trump a bump in the numbers. Let me get on to something slightly different, and this is a Baltimore County, Maryland, 5th grader who got a visit from the local police after his teacher called to rat on him that she had seen a BB gun on the wall behind the student during a class video call. Here is the BB guns in question. These are BB guns. They are well secured. The boy's mother, Courtney Lancaster Sperry, a U.S. Navy veteran, is warning other parents about the lack of privacy during virtual classes after her son was targeted by a teacher who thought she saw a scary-looking gun hanging on the wall of the boy's bedroom. So yeah, now we've got teachers. This is what our remote teaching is doing. If your kid is seen, watch what's going on in the back of them. I may well do a video on how to use like a green screen or something like that so that your kid can sit in front of a green screen and not have anything about their environment seen. Put up an environment that they want to, something that maybe would passively aggressive to tell the teacher to go frack themselves. So this is the downside, one of the many downsides of having virtual classrooms, which is the teachers and other people will start noticing things that are going around in your surroundings, in your home, in a safe way, completely safe, and make assumptions about what these guns are. And apparently they were not as heavily prominent as they are in this picture. This is the picture the mother took. My guess is that they were off way from the way that they talk about it, sort of off background, barely visible, So they got this woman who's a teacher at, let me see, the public school in question, Seneca Elementary School in Baltimore County Public Schools, decided to rat this kid out for no good reason. They saw these things on the wall, said, "Oh my God, I'm scared. They claimed that the reason that they could do this was because you're not supposed to bring guns to school. Well, obviously you're not bringing guns to school. It happened to be on the freaking wall at the person's home with parents under supervision by a Navy veteran, and they're BB guns. About the best you can do is, put somebody's eye out with that thing, if you've seen that movie, Christmas Story. It's ridiculous. She is a snitch. She is a rat. There's no reason for this to ever be happening. But they successfully called the cops. They now have copies of these pictures of this people's, homes that they're keeping and not allowing the parents to see. She tried to get with principal, vice principal, the teacher, and they're all like, high horse and just being complete a-holes about the fact that they called the cops on her. And she was cool about it. She's like, well, I have nothing to hide. Go ahead and search. The cops searched. They found the guns. They said, okay, BB guns. They found them, and they said, okay, well, you're doing the right thing with them. Good for you. Kid's an Eagle Scout, an outdoors kind of kid. You'd sort of see this sort of thing. just insanity, just pure insanity. You know, they're spying on minor children and making note of things that are going on in people's homes. And this is one of the things that are going to have to be, you're going to have to be watching out for now. It's going to have to be watching out for now. It's crazy. Let's see. Marshall says, and Trump did the masterful masterstroke of buying the YouTube ads for the DNC, not to mention the homepage ad and takeover ad of the heading banner on Washington Post. Not chess, Mr. Spock. Wrestling. Oh, God, yes. For me, the whole thing, just cringe. Can't watch. It's too embarrassing to watch the performers. Dropper says, the rumors of celebrities relocating from L.A. true. Gary at Nerdrotic has left San Francisco, is looking for a red state to move to, probably Texas. Yes, there's a lot of people who are moving out of California and New York for other places. Don't know the extent yet. No, not stats, yeah. Drop 2 says, most teachers are lefties. No surprises there. No, of course not. Green screen video would be great. Yeah, I'm seriously thinking about doing an instructional video for that. Yeah. Can't bring videos of guns to school either. Yeah, well, and this isn't even to school. This is somebody's house. What do you expect? And technically, yes, legally, they are not guns. Yes, a BB gun is not a firearm. It's not a firearm. Drop 2 says, Marshall, Damon, Ben Affleck, Tom Cruise, Chris Hemsworth all have the houses in Byron Bay. QLD, much of Hobart, Tasmania, was bought by the U.S. wealthy back in the early 2000s. Yeah. Joe Rogan leaving for L.A., possibly for Texas. Here's what I think, however. I think Texas should close their borders to them. Because I think what's going to happen is in a few years, they will bring their politics with them, and within a few years, Texas will be blue. Because they're not going to leave their politics at home. They're going to bring the same failed policies that brought them to have to leave their prior state with them to Texas and to turn Texas blue. I don't want to see these guys anywhere near Nebraska or South Dakota because they will frack up those states the same way that they have fracked up their own. You know, I'm glad that this is one of those times I'm glad to be flyover country that nobody likes because they're not likely to come here and stay and screw up my life the way that they have screwed up their own. They will not leave their politics back where they left them. They will not integrate into the new politics. Jeanette says, like the green screen instructions as well. Sure. I'm seriously considering it. After I read this, I went, man, people who are doing online instruction and stuff like that are doing meetings via, online forms of communication. Yeah, you need to be able to put something up behind you that is going to hide what your real world looks like. I mean, I hide mine on purpose. Partly, if you watch me for very long, partly you'll find that when I'm not using sort of my default background, which is this one now, I will put up a background that is appropriate to whatever it is my major topic may be. Particularly some of the ones that I've done, like when I did that, my thoughts on the passing of Grant Imahara. I put up my Bridge of the Enterprise background. So I'll put up backgrounds from time to time that have something to do with what I'm talking about. I think it'd be useful, maybe if I showed them how to put up a background. Each of the kids probably has a decent enough laptop that it can handle it. But I've got one that is like Hypnotoad, with just nothing but constant psychedelic stuff looping in the background. I think it would be hysterical if kids were putting up that loop. I think that would be great. Put them up on my website for download and, let kids just Hypnotoad their way through that. I think that would be awesome. So I think I'm probably going to do that next week. Let's see. Jeanette says, Nebraska, it's not for everyone. It's not for anyone from the East or West Coast. Marcia says, all the lefty cities with peaceful protests are experiencing a completely unanticipated and puzzling exodus of both citizens and businesses. I wonder why. And Marshall happens to be somebody who was responsible for a client who had, I believe it was Portland, if I'm not mistaken. No, it was Minneapolis, if I recall, when they started to burn down places. One of Marshall's clients had his place of business burned down. Fortunately, Marshall is an expert at what he does. He's in IT and had all of that client's information backed up, so that when the place was destroyed, it was really a question of him finding a new venue for his business, and all of his financial and other records were all set, ready to go, completely backed up and completely restored due to Marshall's excellent disaster recovery procedures. So, what a surprise that they might want to leave. What a shock. What a shock. I tend to think of this whole thing ultimately as being self-correcting. When you have your cities going up in flames, either you're going to do something differently or your city's just going to die. And you know what? If you decide not to do anything differently and your city dies, I guess that's just too bad for you. Just too bad. Let it go up in flames anymore is my thing. If you want to be left with nothing but roaming gangs and burned out buildings and stuff, well, I guess that's what you're going to be left with. If you plan to take no action, then I guess your police are going to start quitting, which they're doing, and you're defunding the police beyond what I think they should be defunded. I don't think most police departments should have, military type hardware. I don't think so, for the most part. There are places that need it for the most part, though. Lincoln, Nebraska, do we really need military hardware? You could defund that out. But not when you're just cutting things to the point where you can barely pay your cops. I understand at that point cops are going to go, well, screw this, I'm out of here. So, okay, if you want to do that to your city, if you want to leave it so that everybody is leaving who cares, has the wherewithal to vote with their feet, fine. If you're going to be left with nothing but burn out buildings and shut down buildings and smash buildings and homeless and drug dealers, well, okay, fine. If that's what you want, that's what you want. If as a city government, if that's what you're going to go for, okay. And snow skin off my nose. To be perfectly honest, if Southern California and the Eastern Seaboard depopulated, that would be a good thing from my perspective. They have too much of a control over American politics. And the sooner that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, read Cortez on this show, the sooner that she has less say in my life, the better. And the best way for that to happen is for the cities to depopulate. It's their problem. Let's see. Drop Truth says add a Tom Baker scarf and a jackalope. Well, that's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. I could do that. That'd be all right. On a green screen. And Marshall says he's left Minneapolis. The city wanted to tax him for moving out of his old... They wanted to tax him for moving out of his office, the one that had been burned down. Yeah, okay. Yeah, leaving is good. Yeah, getting out. Go for it. It makes perfect sense to me. Leave. Drop Shoe says sanitation problems are enough to leave California. I can't speak to that specifically. I haven't been there in a long, long time. I'm never, ever going to Southern California again. Never. Because I went there on my honeymoon in 1991, and I have some very fond memories of San Diego in particular, Los Angeles to a certain degree, certainly San Francisco. 3 days in San Francisco at that time was great. It was a wonderful place. I do not want to go back and have my memories sullied. I like remembering those places the way they were. Same reason I won't go to New York City ever again. I have very fond memories of visits to New York City. Very fond memories. Back when you could go up into the Crown and the Statue of Liberty. Very fond memories. One of the fondest memories I have, New York City, this will date the hell out of me. We went to see Chorus Line. We got out of the theater. It was a bunch of students. It was like 1980, 83-ish. No, it was 80 or 82. We're getting out of, a whole bunch of us students from Nebraska, and we're getting out, and we're all taking cabs back to the hotel where we were staying at in Manhattan. And so we get out, a bunch of people get in the cab in front of us, we get in the cab behind us, and I say to the cab, to the guy in the cab, first cab pulls out, and I say to my cab driver, $10 tip if you can get us here in 5 minutes. Oh, my God. He wanted that $10 tip because he got us there in 5 minutes. My God, that was amazing. The other time I had fun, got out, one of those other deals, I don't remember what it was we saw, and I said, follow that car, the cab in front of us. That was a whole lot of fun. Going to, seeing Manhattan at that time was great. It was a very nice place. I do not want to soil the memories of that place by going and seeing what it is now. I never will go there again in my life. Drop Truth saying Oregon, Washington, Illinois, all collapsing. Democrat states. Well, again, with Illinois, I know a little bit more about that by virtue of living in Chicagoland for about 10 years. And it is the overt influence that Chicago has over the entire rest of the state. Illinois is a large state. Chicagoland is a fairly small geographic area, but because of the high population density, it has an influence on the rest of the state. If it were just, if like Chicagoland were its own state, then the rest of Illinois would probably be doing okay. But it's the overt influence that Chicago has over the entire state that causes the state to be a problem. Same as California, if I understand correctly. Drop Two says, Gary at Nerdrotic says there's human fecal matter and garbage everywhere in San Francisco. Yeah, I've read that it's been like that. Excuse me. And I've seen videos of it being like that for a couple of years now. Again, I decided long ago I was never going to go visit there again. I have very fond memories of that, not just because it was my honeymoon, but because at the time it was a nice place to be. I don't see that it's a nice place to be anymore, not from what I'm hearing. I don't want to soil the memories that I have. Marshall says, only way you'll get me to set foot in the LAX area is if Joe, we're talking J. Michael Straczynski, has a big Babylon 5 party or there's a movie he wants me to work on. Other than that, nope, not happening. Yeah. I'm never going to have that happen, so no reason. I enjoyed myself too much there. There were weird experiences. One I love to tell. My ex, we were on our honeymoon, and my ex and I had just gotten in, and we're idiots. We don't know anything about the place. So we go to Hollywood and Vine on a Sunday afternoon. We thought, hey, let's take in the Walk of Stars. Let's just walk down the Walk of Stars. Well, of course, Hollywood and Vine is where all the hookers hang out. So we park our car, I think, off of Hollywood someplace about 2 blocks from Vine. Take a right turn onto Vine. The very first thing that happens is this guy with a big, long mohawk. And even back then, mohawks were pretty much a nothing. So it's kind of a throwback. We're like, well, we haven't seen those in a while. He walks up to us, and he's got the hand like this, and he says, excuse me, I have my hand stuck to the side of my face. Do you have any acetone so that I can get it off? We're kind of like, okay, this guy's on some serious drugs, and walked away. But not long after that, hooker comes and propositions me, and I was like, no, I'm on my honeymoon. This is my newlywed. She says, well, that's all right, baby. We can work that out too. I'm like, no, sorry, let's go. And then we had some weird experiences on Venice Beach. But what do you expect? We expected to have a couple of weird things happen at Venice Beach, but these were all largely positive memories. Greatest positive memory to come out of L.A. We were at Mann's Chinese Theater, and a van from Paramount Pictures drives up and opens the door, and out comes some probably production assistants or something. Well, back then, Cheers was really big, the TV show Cheers. But they had another show, a spinoff, called Wings, that aired right after Cheers. But they couldn't get anybody to come for the studio audience. If you wanted to go to the studio audience for Cheers, you had to wait in line to see if you would even get tickets, and then you probably wouldn't. So, but with Wings, they couldn't get anybody. So they pop out at the Chinese Theater and they go, who wants to come to see the taping of Wings? Who wants to come see the taping of Wings? And they're handing out tickets right and left. And I'm like, okay. So we go, and it's kind of like what I expected. But as it happened, the sound stages for Wings were not too terrifyingly far away from Star Trek The Next Generation, which was shooting at the time. So I went to the bathroom once, stepped out of the sound stage, and just walked over to them. Just outside, I didn't do anything, that I didn't try to break in. I just walked out. I didn't have cell phones in the day. I would have taken a selfie with myself, standing at the door of the stage. But I did that. Good fun memories. And the thing about watching a sitcom shoot is it's not like you think it is at all. You see a sitcom and it's half hour of things going right and laughs and everything like that. In real life, when they shoot a sitcom, they're shooting it from like 6 until midnight. And that's because they have bloopers, they have, performances that maybe you want to do it a little differently. Sometimes they'll try a different, punchline or something like that. So it goes on and on and on forever. And I knew this because at that time I was an actor. So I knew that this was going to happen. And what always happens at that point is you start to lose audience. And the audience comes and they're cool about it, up about it at the beginning. And then after about 2 hours, it's just like, oh God, I can't take any more of this. And they start to wander away. But I stayed. I said, no, I'm going to do my duty and be a good audience member. I'm going to stay. So I stayed, and as the audience disappeared, I moved closer and closer because they have microphones hanging over basically these, this where the audience sits, and they had microphones over him. So my ex and I slid down so that we were over the microphones. And I can reliably, even if I've seen the same joke over and over and over, which is what happens. They do 5, 6, 7, 8 takes of the exact same joke, which is, legitimately funny a good first time. If it's a really good joke, it's funny the second time. But after the fourth time, it's not funny at all. But maybe the fourth time is the take that they need. So regardless of how many takes it was, I would sit there and laugh as if it was the first time they'd done the take. So if you watch, there's an episode where the fat guy who runs one of the airport, airlines in there, he runs for mayor. Toward the end of the show, you can hear me laughing very, very clearly, because what they would do, they would take this dwindling audience that they had and put a laugh track on top of it, but have the levels kicked up on what little volume, they had. So there's that episode. I've got to go out and find it someplace, pull it down, because you can hear me laughing. My daughters, much later, they go, oh, God, Dad, that's you laughing. Oh, that's so embarrassing. So that was a fond memory. I have a fond memory of that. I don't want to sully it by going back ever again. Drop of Two says, surprised there hasn't been a cholera outbreak. Yeah, and Marshall says typhus has shown up there as well. Yes, it has. Arizona Department of Education, of Transportation, yeah. Has it been stated typhus is regarded as a something crown disease, that thing we can't talk about? Yes. No, it is typhus, stage 7 and 8 typhus. Absolutely. Yes, it's typhus. They have stuff. They're starting to see things there that we have previously thought eradicated. Ain't gonna go there. I have too many fond memories of that Paramount lot and just ain't gonna go there. Drop 2 says it's 21st century and in a technologically advanced country like the USA, insanity. Yeah, that's what bad policy will create. Yeah, absolutely. They brought the city fathers brought this on themselves, and the people brought it on by voting for the city fathers. That's all there is to it. Did they have soldiers with guns and applause sign as in V for Vendetta? Well, no soldiers with guns. They did have applause signs. But again, when you get into a 6-hour taping and you've heard the same joke over and over again, most people don't have it in them to just keep laughing at it. It's just like it turns into drudgery. 6 hours of the same stuff over and over and over and over again, and bloopers, and trying different things, and okay, wait, that wasn't good for sound or something like that. And it's just, I guess even for my ex, it was just, oh God. But she stuck with it because I was sticking with it, because I said, oh, by God, I'm going to do my duty as an audience member. I'm going to give these people a good audience to work off of, even if it's just me and 2 other people, which by the end, that's really all it was. It was maybe 5 people in, the audience area. But like I say, you can hear me laughing if you ever see that episode. So let's see. No stage 7 and 8 studios. Well, what I did was I went out and wandered. I think it was about a block. I'm not remembering specifically because it's been a long time. It wasn't right next door, but it was really close enough so that I wasn't worried about security, whom I knew were out there. But the exit from the studio that I was in was like on the way to the bathroom in that studio. So I said, screw it, I'm gonna go out and have a little walk. So that's what I did. Anyhow, about that woman in Maryland, the teacher who is narking on students and getting basically swatting them. It's not sending the SWAT teams out, but it's sending the police out when they shouldn't be out. Keep in mind, if you're doing that sort of thing, this is what happens. This is what happens when you gleefully hand over your liberty. This is what you get. And, you know, when he first said it in Star Wars Episode 3, I really thought that George Lucas was going over the top with this line. But there's a line in Star Wars Episode 3, "This is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause." And it's by Padme Amidala in Star Wars Episode 3. I thought that was over the top at the time. Turns out it's right. So if you don't want to have to deal with teachers who are going to rat out their students because they happen to see something in the background that freaks them out when it shouldn't, then you can't give up your freedom. You have to say, no, we need to send these kids to school. That's just that simple. Let's see. John Cleese was apoplectic that the U.S. TV channels added a laugh track to Faulty Towers. Yeah. The truck stations were across a lot from the audience stage taping studios. Again, it's not a long walk. Again, I don't remember specifically. I just remember being out there and going, well, nobody seems to be here. I'll just go for a little walk. And it was close enough that I didn't feel like I was like wandering 1,000, you know. Paramount Pictures butts up against a cemetery. The back wall of Paramount Pictures is a cemetery, back into the cemetery. I wasn't getting into the cemetery, so I was like, okay, I'll just go for a little walk, see what I see what I can find, and I did. So I was happy about that. Hey, Larry, how's life treating you? So, yeah. Let me get into another thing real quick here. I think I'm going to make this a weekly thing, where I give you the weekly statistics for that virus that we cannot talk about here in Lancaster County, which is essentially Lincoln, Nebraska. Lancaster County covers most of the Lincoln metro area. The entire metro area is around 344,000. So if you look at the population, total population, Lancaster County catches most of it. There's another 30,000 or so in there that it doesn't catch. But here is our current statistics. As always, the total population of Lancaster County is 319,090 people, more or less, with more being born at all times. The total number of tests that we have had for that virus is 51,722, so obviously nowhere near even half of them. The total positive tests for that are 3,497. And the total number of deaths in Lancaster County out of that 3,497 is 20. If you do a few little mathematics and multiplication, if you do a little division and multiplication, you discover that the deaths as a percentage of those tested is 0.039%. Deaths as a percentage of those tested positive is a bit higher at 0.572%. And deaths as a percentage of the population itself is 0.0063%, which is up, by the way, about 0.002% from last week. So it continues to be a complete non-issue in Lincoln, Nebraska. And yet our governor has issued a mandatory mask wearing everywhere you go and closing down of a whole bunch of businesses that had just started to reopen after completely crashing our local economy. As with the entire rest of the U.S. economy that's put more than 50 million people out of work. Drop 2 says, why is comedy today so fast and has no time for a chuckle from the audience? Is it because it's a shattergun approach? Joke failed on the next one. Star Trek Lower Decks, I'll be talking about that maybe shortly here too. There's got to be mental toll for kids long term about this. let me shoot you out my prepared remarks. I am pretty sure, just judging by the numbers here and the fact that there's only been 20 deaths yet this entire year, that if I looked very hard, I could find deaths by various other causes that would be more than the deaths of this virus in Lancaster County. So tell me again why I'm supposed to be terrified. Tell me why my grandniece now will go nowhere without a mask. She's terrified. Tell me why our schools are implementing measures that guarantee, absolutely guarantee, that students won't be taught a thing, because they won't. Because I know from IT experience that two things happen here. You have to have students that, first of all, have the self-discipline to do online coursework. And secondly, you have to have instructors who have the ability to create meaningful online coursework. And both of those people are down in the very low percentage rates. If our schools were being honest, University of Nebraska at Lincoln, Nebraska Wesleyan University, Southeast Community College, all of them would just be shutting down until such time as they took the mask restrictions away, if they ever did. They would just shut down, send the students home, and charge nothing. Of course, they can't do that, which is why they do all this insanity. But what they're doing is absolutely guaranteeing that our students will learn absolutely nothing. And then tell me with these stats, tell me again, why has our local economy been completely crashed? Could it be that all politicians, even at our local level, are power-mad, sociopathic narcissists in the textbook definition? See, this virus is not going to go away. It will never go away. It's going to be much like the airport security theater imposed after 9/11. And that's when politicians discovered that we would happily just eject our liberty when we're frightened, even if the liberty that we hand over has absolutely zero impact on what that we are frightened about or what will make us happy. The airport security theater has absolutely no impact on anything other than to provide a haven for thieves. And I say this as an IT specialist with a security training, and particularly physical security training. We will be wearing masks forever. We have now taught 2 generations down. My 3-year-old grandniece is now terrified, and she believes that this is normal. We should just hand over our any liberties whatsoever if we happen to be frightened enough. We'll be wearing these things forever. So are our children, our grandchildren. All of our businesses will remain open or closed at politicians' whims. Our children will be uneducated at our politicians' whims. And this will never end. Politicians never, ever give up any power willingly. This virus or some other manufactured threat will always be here. And again, when he first wrote it for Star Wars Episode 3, I thought George Lucas was actually being over the top, and it turns out to be true. This is how liberty dies. To thunderous applause. Padme Amidala, Star Wars Episode 3. Marcel says Star Trek lowered expectations. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. Yeah. Drop Truth says currently in Australia we've had 472 deaths, 24,407 cases, and a population of 24 plus million for all of 2020 from this virus. Yes. The places where this is an issue is places like New York City with a massive population density and many infection vectors. I like to say it all the time. Look at the infection vectors, and that will tell you the tale of how bad it's going to be. New York City, multiple international airports in that region, huge amount of international trade, many seaports, and inbound things and people are not checked for anything from foreign nations. Tons and tons ordinarily, not at present because it's too much of a horrifying place to go, but typically until this started, lots of tourism, just lots of infection vectors, different ways that you can get infections. Come to Nebraska, right? Landlocked state, no international airport, no international trade straight from the state at all. It has to go through other places. No international trade from the state. The main thoroughfare, I-80, is stopped only on to get gas and go through. We have no meaningful tourism of any kind. We just don't have the infection vectors. And our population density of our largest city, Omaha, metro area of 1 million, still is nowhere near the population density of New York City. So we don't have the infection vectors. What a shock that we don't really have a problem, you know. You can't treat New York City as the same as everywhere else. It's not. Just not. Totally different infection vectors. Let's see. Marshall says, how do you find out how politicians will act when they have a lot of power? Watch what they do with a little power. Yes, and this is a relatively little amount of power. Drop a tooth. I bet in the heavy population areas. Yeah, probably so. Concentrated in the plus 50 population. Yeah. Drop a tooth. Marshall, it won't happen. Politics will be absorbed by corporations. Watch Demolition Man again or any of the dystopian sci-fi films. I don't know. Yeah. Marshall says I've been saying for a while we need an Edgar Friendly around today. Yes, we do. If you watch Demolition Man, Edgar Friendly is that guy who's in the underground and has the nice ranting speech that I don't know, but probably should commit to memory because it's freaking awesome. But this is how liberty dies, to thunderous applause. The applaud of the people who are handing over their liberty, unfortunately. Something totally different than that, and I only found out about it today. I'm Johnny come lately with it, apparently, is Netflix's new softcore kiddie porn called Cuties. I'm not going to give a link in the description box to any of this. Find it if you want yourself. It is, frankly, horrifying. It's like take a girl band of the early 2000s, but age it down to like 10, and sexualize it up. It's just horrifying. It really does look like softcore kiddie porn. And I assume, because who's watching this, right? Are teens and tweens watching this? No, I don't think so. I think their major demographic for this is going to be male child molesters, and they've caught a lot of flack for it, and they've had to walk certain stuff back for it, but it's not like they're stopping airing it. So the best thing about it is if you do find the trailer for it on YouTube, and you can look, add to their view count, but click the thumbs down on it, because right now, when I checked it last, it had a 26-to-1 dislike to like ratio. It was like 260,000 dislikes and only 11,000 likes. I've forgotten exactly what it was, but it calculated it out to a 26-to-1 dislike to like ratio. So I have some, hope for humanity. And all of the comments are, you guys are sick mofos. This is some sick stuff that you're putting out here. It's really terrible. It's really awful. They should not be running this. It's indicative of the minds that inhabit halls of things like entertainment. It's just a wretched hive of scum and villainy. That you would even think about putting something like this on is crazy. It's just crazy. What did you think? Who is your target demographic, really, for this thing? It's got to be child molesters. Who else would watch this crap? It's ridiculously stupid. Dennis O'Leary, yes, Drop Truth, didn't get that to start ranting on MTV. He's a stand-up comic originally, yeah. Supercruise 63, kind of like Nazi Germany gave up their ability to grand applause, and we saw what happened there, yeah. Drop Truth says, what sort of sick parent would allow their 11-year-old daughters on programs like Cuties? Well, it's always a question of two things. You hand them a big enough check. A check with enough zeros will usually convince people to do just about anything. But you also have this phenomenon of stage mothers, and I've seen this in action myself a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away when I was an actor. I saw it a little bit myself. The kid, just ambivalent as hell. But the mom, for some reason, just pushes his kid, acts as the kid's agent more or less, or if they're not their agent, will be calling their agent every 5 minutes and, pushing the kid to get all kinds of, do anything, just anything. So really it's not so much the parents that allow it. It's the fact that they go, oh, good, a Netflix series that's going to get my kids some exposure. That'll help their career, And I don't care what it is, There's a great line in a terrible movie called I don't remember what it was. I think it's Elves. I believe the movie is Elves. Go look for Best of the Worst with Red Letter Media and their review of Elves. There's a scene in there where there's a brother and a sister, and the sister is getting dressed, and the brother is all like really eager because he's seen her with her top off. And she says, that's really gross. You're my brother. And he says, yeah, but you got fracking big tits. And and the reaction from the Letter Crew media is, this is the line we want your son to say, ma'am. That's like I say, it's like anything that'll get him any kind of exposure, no matter how weird and maybe sick it is, or a check with lots of zeros, and that will get people to do just about anything. Marcia said, wow, I just found your collection of vintage 1950 era slide rules. Oh, cool. You have a collection of them. Wow. Got one sitting around here that my dad used when he was in college getting his doctorate. But I've been a while since I've seen it. I certainly lost my own a long, long time ago. The moment they got calculators, that thing, I don't think I paid the slightest bit of attention to it. I probably should have. If I had, it would be around today and it would be worth something. It says, why were you looking for them? Oh, well, today, Marshall and I are both big geeks, just big geeks. If I had a collection of slide rules, I'd be looking for them too. Yeah, just to know where they were. Acquaint myself with them so that maybe I could actually use one. Not that you'd want to in this day and age, but just so that I could say I could. So, a couple other things I could talk about. Nichelle Nichols. This has been ongoing for a little while, but it came to my attention and I thought I should mention it. There's a GoFundMe for Nichelle, and this is what it says on the GoFundMe. It's written by Marion Smothers, who is Nichelle's younger sister. Nichelle, originated the role of Lieutenant Uhura in Star Trek, the original series. She's in her 80s now. What's written on the GoFundMe is Nichelle has always had a very independent life, living on her own terms. She's enjoyed a successful career in the public eye, acting on television and in films, performing live, and making personal appearances at fan conventions. It's certainly true. Has gone to a ton of conventions. In 2010, she first encountered Gilbert Bell. He said he was a producer and that he was developing a feature film in which he hoped to have Nichelle co-star as well as be a 50-50 partner in the enterprise and its profits. But slowly, deliberately, and methodically, Bell insinuated himself into her life. He convinced her to allow him to move into the second house on her property, adjacent to her residence, as they worked on the project that never happened. Bell still lives in the house under a fraudulent lease, essentially paying nothing, while compelling Nichelle to pay all his utilities, and he continues to fight his removal. In 2013, Nichelle was in a very weakened state following a hospitalization. Knowing that her immediate family members mostly resided outside of California, Bell took advantage of the situation to obtain her signature on a medical and general powers of attorney. Over time, he continued to take fees from her many personal appearances, and even her pension and Social Security began to disappear. He later decided her personal residence, he put it into his name, which was the final act that triggered the petition for conservatorship, eventually granted to her son, Kyle Johnson. We believe that Bell has taken financial advantage of Nichelle to the tune of well over $1 million, but we've only just scratched the surface. Her only child, Kyle Johnson, is Nichelle's conservator at this point and full-time caregiver. In August of 2018, our nephew Kyle, who lived with his wife in New Mexico since the 1990s, returned to Los Angeles to be Nichelle's full-time caregiver and subsequent person for estate and person. But so much of this damage has already been done. Since then, Gilbert Bell has done the only thing left for him to do. He has slandered Kyle's good name in numerous publications. He recorded a staged encounter with him, Nichelle, and Kyle, releasing the video to media outlets and the LAPD, and filed suit demanding the continued fraudulent possession of her adjacent property under onerous terms. So what can you do to help? As a fan and admirer of Nichelle, we would ask for your support by donating toward the accumulated and ongoing legal fees to defend and ensure her continuing conservatorship by her son Kyle. These funds are necessary for defending Nichelle from Gilbert Bell's baseless but damaging suit, our countersuit, and associated discovery, trial, etc., and to recover all or some of what he has stolen and mitigate the damage he has inflicted upon her. We appeal to your generosity and appreciate your support in any amount. Please share this on your Facebook, Twitter, and other social media accounts. And if you would consider being more active, please contact us. And that's what they say on her GoFundMe. So with all that in mind, I would certainly ask my viewers to consider donating to the Shields Up Nichelle Nichols GoFundMe at gofundme.com/f/shields-up-Nichelle-Nichols. And there's a link to that in my description box. Seems like he's pretty well screwed her. I think this is a good charity. Please donate. And tell all of your friends, family, neighbors, pets, and livestock to do the same. Let's see. Daily drivers in 1972 one on your desk. I'll be damned, you still use them, huh? Cost of calculators $5 today of a slide rule under 50. Yes. Marshall says, with a slide rule, I can calculate about 10 times faster and see all the related ratios at once. Well, hey, if it works, not the kind of work I've ever done. So, my most recent mathematics was showing the divisions so that I could give you stats for Lancaster County's virus stats and stuff. Yes, send the boys round to speak with Gilbert Bell. Well, hey, make him an offer he can't refuse. But, yeah, if they'd ever been associated with the mob, that would be an option. Yeah. I used to work for a guy, I used to work for two people who, the place that I worked, it was a weird deal. Half of my management came from AT&T's management, and the other half came from AT&T's labor unions. And this was at a time when AT&T was still manufacturing phones. They still owned Unix, the operating system, so this goes way back. So the labor union was pretty powerful. And the guy that I had who was over me had worked his way up very high into the National Labor Union. So high, and he was Italian, no less. My thought always is that if I ever got in trouble with somebody, if I'm out and, I got some kind of mugger who's maybe associated with somebody, I'd say, you don't want to touch me. You don't want to touch me because I know Nicky, and I'd give his name, in Chicago. You don't want to touch me. You touch me and Nicky is going to get your ass. He's not going to let me go down. A complete lie. But, they go, Nicky who from Chicago? You've never heard of him, Nicky? You never heard of this guy? What kind of rock you been living under, man? Nicky runs everything over there, Not exactly his real name, but Nicky Corleone. You ever hear of Nicky Corleone? You've never heard of Nicky Corleone out of Chicago? I worked for Nicky Corleone. I did his books. Sort of accurate, just to see if I could power my way out of anything that looked like it was organized crime related. Drop 2 says, in Brazil, you simply pay the Polícia Militar to solve these sort of issues. The problems are simply buried. Yes. Blazer101 says the Democrats are trying to push out 250 million mail-in ballots. Will this delay the election past January 20th, 2021? Unless it is a complete blowout for Trump, it'll be contested. If it's not a complete if it's anything like close, it's going to be contested by both sides, and they will push it out as long as humanly possible. if the Democrats keep the House, since the House decides if it's contested, they'll push it out long enough to make sure that they've got control of the House to do that. If the Democrats lost the House, then the Democrats would certainly push it out as long as they possibly could, or take care of it while they still had the House before January. But unless it's a blowout, it's going to be a very, very ugly situation indeed. Very ugly. I said last week, I think there's every possibility you could see a real civil war out of it from multiple different vectors. At the very least, Marshall said this on social media today. At the very least, what you're looking at is, if Trump wins, the left is going to have some sort of what amounts to a psychotic break. And if you go back and see what I was talking about when I was talking about the guy that I had from a thread on George Takei's Twitter that I went back and forth with him on, no question in my mind, there's a guy who's, George Takei and the people that follow him will have some sort of serious mental break. It will be some kind of breakdown. They have already been insane, literally insane. It's some kind of, they call it Trump derangement syndrome. To me, it's some kind of mass hysteria. But they've got this mass hysteria going on where they cannot believe, that anybody who doesn't say that they are in favor of the Democrat, it means that they must be a crazy Trump supporter. And they've been trying for 4 years to unseat a president who, sorry guys, won the election fair and square. You may not like the fact that the popular vote was different from the electoral vote, but hey, that happens from time to time. It's happened like 3 or 4 times in my lifetime. You just deal with it. So they've been trying to get him unseated in every possible way. They're trying to do it now by saying he's doing things to the Postal Service. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on so many levels. Guys, tell you what, when I'm not getting daily, every single day junk mail, then I'll think there's something seriously wrong with the Postal Service. But as long as people who send me junk mail think that there's money to be had in it, and they're reliably getting it to my house, I don't think there's anything wrong. And I still have 1 or 2 bills that I pay not online, but with a check. Gets posted just fine. I spent more than a year, going back and forth with Social Security Administration on paperwork that was time sensitive. Never had a problem with it. They would get me stuff, they'd send me stuff, and I would get it 2 days later. I would, it was never a problem. There's nothing going on here, not nationally. Now, I've lived a lot of places. I lived in Chicagoland for 10 years. I lived in and around Des Moines for about 10 years. I lived in towns as small as 1,000. I live now in a city of about 344,000. And I found over time that you find places where your postal delivery service is good or bad. The worst of all time was Chicagoland. Hands down the worst. And that was largely during the Clinton administration. I don't see Clinton being thought of as some kind of criminal mastermind who was trying to screw up the postal system. Close in behind that was Winterset, Iowa. They were pretty bad. But that was during the Obama administration. I don't see him being pointed to as some sort of shady master criminal mastermind who was making, the postal service bad there. It was regional. And I would get on the horn with the regional postal service directors and, yell at them from time to time. Not that it made the slightest bit of difference, but the service varies from where you are. It's not everywhere. And if you've got bad postal service, well, it's time to go to your local postmaster, your district postmaster, and scream at them. It's not something that's happening all over the country. And again, the moment that I stop getting, junk mail every single day, then I'll start thinking maybe there's a problem. So they're crazy. They've gone completely off the deep end. And if Trump wins again, it'll be a complete break, some kind of severe mental break, psychotic break. I don't think it would come under that definition, but some sort of severe mental break. If Biden were to win, on the other hand, you're looking at a situation where clearly, I'm sorry, I don't care if you're a Democrat, clearly this man is suffering from some level of senile dementia. And that doesn't ever get better. That only ever gets worse. It is a condition that can either be very gradual or it can just be sudden. But if you compare his speeches and what he can do now and his campaigning, this campaign cycle, even to the last presidential one, it's clearly very different. It's clearly very, very different. He's much more low energy. He's stumbling over his words from time to time. He's not making sense sometimes when he says things out. Clearly, he's suffering from some level of senile dementia that's not going to get better. So at some point, he will probably have to resign. And guess who's going to be president? Kamala Harris. Shadowman was saying on Twitter he had received 5 mail-in ballots already. Yes, and I've forgotten whom one of my viewers here has said that they've gotten 4 mail-in ballots from people that not at their residence. So yeah, I know a guy. There's a talk show host in Des Moines when I was there in 2016 who got a mail-in ballot both from Florida. He just moved to Iowa from Florida, so he got a mail-in ballot from Florida and he got a mail-in ballot from Iowa. He could have cast them both, and no one would have known. So when the Democrats are screaming on about how there's no possible, everything's fine with mail-in balloting, no, it's not. It never has been, but right now, just as somebody who has some IT security training, I can see just physically multiple vectors by which these things could be subverted. There was somebody who put a video up showing the difference between the exterior of the envelope for a Republican vote as opposed to a Democrat. They were marked, ones with an R and ones with a D. Well, let's just leave aside for the moment whether somebody in the Postal Service will screw with that. Yeah, you have to, when you're evaluating security risks, you have to look at it from a sort of paranoid perspective and say, what is the risk? What is the worst thing that could happen? Well, in that case, one of the worst things that could happen is you'd have an activist who is doing his rounds and decides, oh, look, I'm seeing an R here as a ballot. I think I'll just throw that into the circular file or get out my lighter and burn them all. That is a possibility. Now, whether or not they do it is another thing, but it is a possibility. It is a vector from which this could be undermined. There are all kinds of vectors. When you start to get paranoid about it, which is what somebody who's doing security does, you must be paranoid. If you're not being paranoid when you're doing security, you're not doing the job right. You have to be paranoid. It is a requirement of the job. Because you want to think of the worst possible things could happen. You want to think of the best possible things that can happen. You want to think of the worst and everything in between that could possibly happen so that you can guard against it. You want to mitigate that risk. You mitigate the ones that are the worst possible vectors and, work your way backwards in terms of what's, the best possible vectors. But you always have to think paranoid, and there's lots and lots and lots and lots of vectors on this. The only way to make sure that your vote is going to get counted is if you show up at your polling place and vote in person. It's just that simple. Let's see. Yeah, the Democrats are going all in on the mail-in ballots. Absolutely. Yeah, I know. And they're trying to make it look like Trump is doing something to subvert it, which is nonsense. Joseph Stalin dropped through said some variant of it's not the people who count the vote, it's the people who vote that count. It's the people who count the votes. Yeah, there's some level of that as well. I think in the United States in general we do a pretty good job of that. I think there's certainly some fraud that doesn't get found out. I don't know how you quantify it. I don't know how you say how many are fraudulent and what aren't. I've heard from people who were election officials saying that, we've investigated reports of fraud and found them to be very unusual. And I'm like, what if they didn't report them to you? That talk show host who got 2 ballots, what if he didn't say anything? What if he just cast both ballots and kept his mouth shut? Would you have known? How do you quantify it? How do you know? Just because you investigated them doesn't mean that a bunch of others that were never told to you, it didn't get through. How do you know? Who do you know? How do you know? Let's see. Is there such thing as a sociopathic break? I don't know what you call it psychologically. I don't know. You should never assume that just because my parents were psychologists that I know all about psychology. I can do things like look at definitions of, antisocial personality disorder and say, oh, look at these symptoms, they apply to politicians. I can look at narcissistic personality disorder and say, look at these symptoms, they apply to politicians. But beyond that, I'm a total neophyte just because I happen to be around people who were. It's not like they sat down at the dinner table and started talking psychology. So you want to get that, you got to get other family members of mine who are either studying or have degrees in psychology. Simple way, Marshall says, to tell if you're dealing with a person who is suffering from DDS is to ask this question. List 5 good things that Trump has done. Yeah, and they won't be able to do it. They won't be able to do it. In fact, they will dodge the question and go back and say something like, typically, they'll come back and say, you effing Trump lover, Trump's your God. And you'll be like, no, I just want you to name 5 things that he's done good. Because no president does everything terrible. There's things that you can say even about Obama, who was a pretty terrible president, that, there are things in there he must have done well. I don't remember them. But if you press me on it, I could probably go back through his record and say, okay, he did this okay. He did that okay. You can come up with 5 things out of 8 years that he did all right. If you can't come up with 5 things in 4 years, given everything that Trump's done, there's got to be 5 in there someplace, even if you think he does terrible. But people with TDS, yeah, they won't be able to come up with anything, and probably will throw it back at you like I did with that thing with George Takei, where he throws back, oh, you just a Trump lover, he's your God. I'm like, no, I've told you repeatedly, I'm a libertarian, I'm not really a Trump supporter. And don't overlay your own emotional thoughts onto my words. Read my words, because I'm very careful about what I write. I learned to be that many years ago. Marshall, you know this. Dropper True says, did Kamala Harris sleep with Bill Clinton to get ahead? No pun intended in politics. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. No, Willie Brown, get your sexual opportunists right. I don't know who she may not have slept with. I don't know. I think it's largely irrelevant. I look at what she's done. What has she done as a public servant? And that, to me, tells the tale. Tulsi Gabbard murdered her on her record as a prosecutor, and rightfully so, I think. The thing about the Democrats is, and I said this earlier in that thread that I started to repeat back, I don't know any Democrats that actually wanted Joe Biden. Everybody I know wanted Bernie Sanders. I think they voted for him, but I don't know anybody who actually wanted Joe Biden. Now they're jumping on Joe Biden because they can't stand the thought of Trump. So they're going, oh, Joe Biden this, Joe Biden, Joe Biden, Joe Biden. But if you asked them, a year ago, it would have been no, Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. They didn't want the guy, but you can't get them to admit that now. Blazer 1-1, you got 5 mail-in ballots last week. You're the one that I was talking about that got the multiple ballots. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. If you use them all, would anybody ever know? If you kept your mouth shut? The problem is most of the time people do stuff like that. They do something illegal. This is something my dad taught me because he'd mentioned it several times over the years that he had patients that were both the security wing of state mental hospital where he worked for a while, and when he was in private practice, he had patients that were at the state penitentiary. And he told me repeatedly that if you want to get away with something, you shut up about it. Most of the time, the way that these guys get caught is that they will blab that they did something to a girlfriend and they'll have a fit of conscience. Or they'll blab something that they did something to in a bar and somebody listening will have a fit of conscience and call the cops. It's not really a question of all this wonderful police detective work like you see. It's a question of this guy blabbed. If you want to get away with something, you do it and you shut up and never tell anybody, ever. And you'll have a much better chance of getting away with it. So if you didn't tell anybody, I don't know, it'd be illegal, but could you use all 5 of those without anybody knowing? Let's see, increasing information exposure increases attack surface exposure. Yeah, when you're talking about vectors, absolutely. Willie Brown, he was Speaker of California State Assembly, Mayor of San Francisco. That's who we were talking about. Kamala, the Ugandan giant, Harris had slept with. Maybe, I don't know. beyond, I don't care as long as it's not something like Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, because that was a different thing for me. People go, "Oh, he just got a BJ." I'm like, no, that's not the issue to me at all. Not only did he lie to a grand jury about it and got disbarred, as an attorney, he got disbarred for lying to a grand jury, and also was then, impeached. But that was never going to go anywhere, and that was a foregone conclusion. But what he did was he was taking advantage of the woman on the absolute lowest rung of the ladder. Had he been in a corporate environment, he would have been fired for sexual harassment. She could have brought charges against him for sexual harassment, potentially sexual assault. When you're dealing with something like that, the person who has at the top, most powerful man in the world, and an absolute lowest rung, an unpaid intern, I don't care if she wanted it. You're still dealing with a difference in power that should never be breached. And then he spent 9 months destroying her reputation over it and lying. And to me, that's really horrifying behavior. That's behavior I really care about. You get into things where who's sleeping with whom, God, who even knows? I've forgotten which senator it was, homosexual senator, but his boyfriend was running a prostitution ring out of his the senator's Washington apartment. That's how sleazy these guys really are. They're all pretty sleazy. I don't care about it very much. It's just run-of-the-mill crap until you get to a president and an unpaid intern. A vast, vast difference in power that simply should never have been broached. And that bothered me a lot. And then spending 9 months destroying her reputation and finally having to admit that, yes, he did. But spending the 9 months destroying her reputation, using the power of his office as the most powerful man in the world. No, that's just wrong, 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 wrong. Obama supported NASA when it truly needed it. There you go. Yeah, there's one thing Obama did well. He supported NASA when they needed it. Obama's best thing was that he did the Iran deal. Yeah, maybe. Dropping through says Obama insulted Biden regularly when he was VP. Now Obama endorses him. Oh, the hypocrisy. That's just normal in American politics. You see that all the time. All the time. They'll be at each other's throats when it's the primaries, and then the moment that one of them gets it, they're all falling behind him and say, that's the person that really should, I would have been liked to have been, but we're so happy that this person that I tore apart in the debates got, the nomination. They're going to be great and they'll do wonderful things. That's normal. Both parties do it. It's just a question of party unity. They will always fall in line the moment that they have an actual nominee. You only get a little bit of dissension. This time around, they did get a little bit of dissension out of people like Ocasio-Cortez, Red Cortez, who endorsed Bernie. But that's a little odd. I think in her case, ordinarily what happens is a politician looks and they say, okay, I got to fall in line for my future career. She looked at it and she said, no, my future career is with all of these socialists and communists that are coming up. And they wanted Bernie. And so for me to endorse him means that I'm going to pay dividends down the line. And of course, they're talking about maybe getting her a job in a Biden administration. Yet another reason not to vote for him. Having Red Cortez involved in politics in any way is a very bad thing. Barney Frank Proxenoid says, yes, that's the one. That's the one, the New York congressman and the guy whose boyfriend was running a prostitution ring out of Barney Frank's apartment. Yes, I've forgotten his name, but that's it. Barney Frank. Yep. Blazer says, well, if William Shatner dies, God forbid, that will be the end of Star Trek. No, I don't think so. It's just that you have to get rid of the people that are running it now. That hack fraud Alex Kurtzman, who proves that in Hollywood you fail upward. And look at all the crap that he made prior to Star Trek. And there's some rumblings now that they may be ousting him. That would be a good thing. That would be a very good thing. I don't know how seriously to take those rumblings. You always hear these kind of things in the background, and there are various people on YouTube who are, say that, I've got inside information. I'm sorry, but oh God, what's his name? Overlord DVD. What am I blanking on his stage name? He's constantly saying he's got all this inside information and it's all over for this season, and he's always wrong. Why is anybody paying attention to him? He's always wrong. He has no insider information. He's always wrong. So it's impossible to know how seriously to take some of these things. Maybe they're looking at there's some internal strife and they're looking to get rid of Alex Kurtzman. If so, good. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. It's impossible for me to tell. And I don't pay any attention to anything, really. I pay attention to when things happen. Telling me that something's going to happen doesn't do it for me. Telling me that there's a new series they're working on called Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Okay, that's fine that you told me that. It's an announcement. Let's see what's happening. Give me episodes. Give me pre-production stills. Give me something that shows me that you're actually doing things, not just talking about it. They talked about a Section 31 show. Where did that go? Nowhere. I believe it when I see it. That's all the way it is. I believe it when I see it. Just saying you're doing something doesn't tell me anything. Let's see. Drop 2 says Blazer 101, it's dead already. No, fans are keeping it alive. Fans keep Star Trek alive. Even through the worst of times like we have right now, fans keep it alive. Yeah, let's see. Bill is building up to a Star Trek Lower Decks rant. Not so much a rant, but I do have something to say about it in a bit, yeah. Marshall says, as long as Kurtzman is in charge, we will have no good Star Trek, yeah. And Doomcock, thank you, Marshall. That's what I'm thinking of. Guy says, I got all this insider information. And then it never happens. It never materializes. Guys, why are you watching this man? I mean, I get that part of his appeal. There are YouTubers that go on and they rant and they do anger videos, they do outrage videos because their viewers like to be outraged. It's not what I do at all. Always said it when I was reviewing. I'm not an outrage reviewer. It probably screws up some of my views because of that. I am trying to be the level head in the room, the adult in the room. I'm not an outrage reviewer. But look back at this guy's videos and see how many times he's been right. And it's this. How many times have been wrong? It's this. Why is anyone paying attention to his insider information? He's always wrong. He's always wrong. Kurtzman and Chibnall are ruining our sci-fi. It's not just Chibnall and Kurtzman. We've also got Jar Jar Abrams who's ruining things. I did a standalone video called There's No Escaping the Woke, which pretty much, for me, says it all. You have people here who are crazy social justice warrior, woke people who are destroying all of our favorite franchises, and therefore I cannot help, even if and I wish I could do just science fiction and stuff. I actually prefer that, but I can't. You can't anymore. It's impossible. You have to deal with the woke because there is no escaping the woke. You just can't not deal with them. Mecha Random 42, another good YouTuber. She and I used to talk offline, and I don't want to talk about politics. Well, guess what? She talks about politics sometimes. There's no way to avoid it because there is no escaping the woke. They get into everything and ruin everything. It's just that simple. Drop 2 says, Marshall, I'm currently rewatching the Star Trek, the animated series. Yes, Season 1, Episode H, The Magics of Megas 2, was certainly the basis for Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Yeah, Magics of Megas 2 is one of those things. Like anything else, Star Trek, the animated series, has a hit-miss ratio. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good, but there are a few duds. The Infinite Vulcan is one that we all kind of look the other way and pretend that hope that nobody knows exists. But then you got episodes like The Slaver Weapon, which are amazing. It has a hit miss ratio, but yeah, that's one that after you see it and you go, oh man, Star Trek V seems a lot like that, in some ways. Drop 2 says, don't go to Doomcock's live streams. It's an echo chamber. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Shadow Man, how's life treating you today? Marshall says, Wonder Woman 1984 is supposed to be woke too. Well, how could it not? There is no escaping the woke. They will screw up everything that we in the fanish space love. They just screw it up. And until they're gone, they're going to keep screwing it up. It's just that simple. Dropper 2 says, some great episodes, easily expanded into hour-long live-action episodes of films in terms of the animated series. Yeah, actually, if you listen to some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that came out on the DVD releases, David Gerald and Dorothy Fontana, who were the biggest minds behind that show, said that the scripts for the animated series were about the same length as an hour-long episode of Star Trek. The difference was that they were faster in animation. They just moved faster in animation because of the nature of the medium. But yeah, absolutely. You know, there are hour-long episodes that you could do in there, no question. It's like Star Trek, the original series. It had its hit-miss ratio. You know, there are episodes in Star Trek, the original series, you know, Spock's brain, and the children shall lead. Episodes that you just, you know, fans just kind of want to look the other way and don't worry about that episode. Just don't worry. And the same thing happened in the animated series. There's some really great episodes. Yesteryear, a brilliant, great episode that does everything about Vulcans in a much better way, written by a much more talented writer, Dorothy Fontana, as opposed to who was doing Star Trek Discovery, where they got into some of the same material but did it badly and written badly. Great episode, you know, and the Slaver Weapon, great episode. But then you get a couple that just kind of like, that forget about that one. It's just put it over there someplace. Let's see. Lower Decks have made me very angry. I'll get into that in a minute for sure. Dropper 2 says, isn't Melissa McCarthy playing Wonder Woman now to keep the SJWs? No, I think it's still Gal Gadot, but she's keeping the SJWs happy because of the nature of that character. Yeah, Marshall's plugging my video. There's no escaping the woke. I'll put a link to that. It's my most recent standalone I did. What I'm trying to do now, there's another YouTuber who I'm taking my cues from. He does about one standalone a week, and then he does a fairly lengthy, live stream like this one. I'm trying to get to the point where I'm doing at least one standalone per week. So we'll see how that goes. I think I'm going to be able to get that to happen time-wise with things I have to do. 'Cause my time is a little different right now. Bill hasn't ranted on that yet. Brain, what is brain? Yes. Brilliant. One of the most brilliant lines to ever come out of Star Trek. A woman who is stupid saying, brain, what is brain? Again, we just kind of, Spock's brain, just forget that one. It doesn't really exist. It's over there someplace. Don't bother watching it. City on the Edge of Forever, yes. Enterprise and Incident, yes. Any number of other episodes, yes, but Spock's brain, no. And the Children Shall Lead, no. Co-starring Melvin Belly, an attorney, no. But it's always with anything. And it's like any show, really. It has a hit-miss ratio. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. In Star Trek, generally speaking, it has a good hit-miss ratio, even with films and stuff like that. So, yep, drop truth. Walter Koenig wrote The Infinite Vulcan, which is unfortunate. Hate to diss Walter, but man, Giant Spock. No. You know, the interesting thing about that episode really are the Philosians, who are a plant-based life form. That's kind of a cool idea. A sapient plant, kind of cool. But then you got the giant people, and it just went off the rails. So, okay. Well, somebody wanted me to talk about Star Trek Lower Decks. I'll do that briefly. I'm not going to rant about that as long as you think I will. Okay, Star Trek Lower Decks. Here's a screen cap. Okay. This is not this week's episode, but I want you to notice a couple of things going on here. There's really three things that are interesting to watch. The first one is this character. The second one is these two characters. And the third thing is the small blue object that is hovering in the air next to this character's mouth. What is wrong with this picture? Well, it's pretty obvious from this one. Guy's sitting at the bar, but he has no chair. These guys over here, they're sitting at a table, but they have no chair. And while it's not what it looks like, if I was going to blow this up, you could see it. Next to the African-American female in the blue uniform is what looks like a translucent blue dildo right here, like up by her mouth. Now, I know what it is. If you look closely in other parts of the screen, it's not actually a dildo. It's a glass. It's a strange. They have these tubular glasses. You can see them up here. They look a little bit like bongs in a way, bulbous at the bottom and stuff. And that's what's there. But the way that they've done it, because they're not sitting at a table, they're just hovering in midair. That's not sitting on a table or being held. It's hovering right up here. How do they do that? How do they do that? You know, in Star Trek the Animated Series, every once in a while, 1974, limited animation, limited budget, could not draw, full animation, cut some corners. Every once in a while, you would notice something like this. If you were real keen-eyed, you'd notice that something like that was happening. But there's no excuse for that. Now, probably a big budget. They have CGI to handle all of this stuff. Why was this chair over here not just pulled over that far? Or why was the character not slid over onto the chair? I mean, how do you get that to happen? It's just so dumb. Shadow Man says, Lower Decks, I'm most disappointed beaming into space at the highest possible dispersion. Lower Decks is, God, it's just not funny. It's just not funny. That's my whole thing. It's just not funny. And last week they had, a perfect example of it. It's ongoing throughout the whole thing. It just isn't funny. But last week they had a perfect example where, I guess it's Mariner that's the main character in this, or one of the 3 or 4 main characters. She spends, at the beginning, she's like, oh, look, it's one of these new shuttles with a blast shield, and she opens and closes it, open and close it, open and close it. Well, guess what? It's not funny to open and close the blast shields just because they happen to exist. That's not funny. And if you want a good example of a good use of blast shields, it's in the first Star Wars movie in 1977. And the heroes are running down the corridor. I think it's Chewie and Han running down the corridor. They're heading for where a blast door is. And the Stormtroopers are like, close the blast doors, close the blast doors. Well, the blast doors start closing. Chewie and Han jump through. The blast doors close, and then the Stormtroopers have to stop short and go, open the blast doors, open the blast doors. That's funny. See, that's funny. It's an integrated part of the story, and it flows naturally. They're trying to stop them. They miss. They have to open it. That becomes funny. Just pushing the button and open, down, close, and close. It doesn't matter. It's not funny. There's nothing in this show that's funny. It would be one thing. I can overlook quite a lot if it's funny, but it's not. It's not funny. There is... At no point in this show do I do anything other than just kind of sit. I have not chuckled once. I'm trying to think if maybe on this episode I came close to chuckling once, or kind of almost went, huh? But then what happened? I don't remember where it was, because whatever happened right after it took the huh right out of it. It is a perfect example of what the brilliant, talented Rich Evans calls non-comedy, which is where you watch something and, there are jokes that work, jokes that fall flat, and then there's jokes where you feel when you're kind of like this before and then this after. This is anonymity. There just isn't anything that's funny. It's like today, okay. The main character, who's the only one apparently on the ship who's actually competent, is playing his violin. And this is something we've seen a million times in Star Trek. Violins and stringed and wood instruments and stuff, very frequently used. It's heavily implied by that era that, classical music is a big deal. We don't see that much rock and roll and things. And he's doing that, and it's not impressing anybody. And then he's kicked off the stage by Mariner and this other girl, who then do this big giant metal pounding thing. That's not funny. Being kicked off the stage and supplanted with the metal is not funny. And then it goes where apparently the metal is thrashing so bad that it's making the entire ship vibrate with the bass. And then the captain is on with a Klingon, and the Klingon's getting pissed off because he's hearing this bass coming over. That also isn't funny. It's, and it all kind of goes downhill from there. It's the main character Mariner violating orders left and right and saying, well, that's normal, that's just what I do. And it would be one thing if what she violated was funny, but it's not. It's like bad sight gags. It's like somebody watched, Looney Tunes cartoons that were directed by Chuck Jones. Chuck Jones was a master at the sight gag. And Chuck Jones was one of the main directors in the original Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoons. Just absolute master of sight gags. He knew how to set that up and have it work out perfectly. Somebody watched that and said, I'm going to try to do sight gags. And it falls flat. It's just not funny. It just doesn't even work. It just isn't funny. Let's see. Shadowman says, no excuses. This is supposed to be A tier intellectual property. Yeah, again, I have nothing, honestly, against a sitcom of some kind. It just has to be smart. It has to be done well. It has to be kind of funny, That image is from episode 1. Yeah, episode 2 was worth. Episode 3 was slightly better than crap. For me, it all runs together. All I can say is I'm glad I'm not paying for this. Bitcoin! Excuse me. Bitcoin! Excuse me. Glad I'm not paying for it. I'm glad I'm not paying for any of this junk. Let's see. Yep, widest possible dispersion, energize. Kids cartoons have a better QA. Yeah, I don't know who the target audience of this is supposed to be. I didn't know from the beginning. I still don't. Jack O'Neill Marshall says, turning the lights on and off on the Asgard ship when he's merged with the computer is funny and perfectly in character. Yeah. Again, that's something where if it's in character, it's a situation where you have a guy who is, oh, what the hell have they done with me? Oh, look what I can do. That is funny. But having Mariner just go on the shuttle and flicking the switch on and off is not funny. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Didn't Data play the violin? I think Data played the violin. Lots of different. We saw lots of different classical instruments all the time on Star Trek: The Next Generation. Very heavily implied that was the kind of music that was popular in the 24th century. People got together. They had their quartets. They had their their band, not whole bands, but I would call them small orchestra numbers that they would do. I saw a lot of that. A little bit of other types of music. Riker liked jazz, but you didn't see anything that was like real contemporary style music. It was stuff that was more highbrow. Super 63 says, funny is when you're punishing yourself watching Lower Decks when you should be enjoying yourself watching Stargirl. I can't disagree with you there. But I feel like I have to watch it. I don't know. I've been with this franchise for 53 years. And I've been burned consistently for the last 9. I will have to give the next season of Star Trek Discovery some level of attention, at least in the beginning. I will never watch another episode of Picard. Just done with that series. I don't care. I'm never watching it again. I feel like I have to give some level of attention to Discovery because it's moving into territory where we have already seen people operating in this era from other TV series, and it's going to completely blow them out of the water. And that irritates me. So, because we've seen repeatedly people operating in that time frame, that they've been pushed up into 800,000 years into the future. This is an era in which we have seen other characters from the future operating. We have actually an idea of what the Federation looks like in that time period. So, I'm just going to watch them walk all over that and be pissed off, very likely. Let's see. Drop of Truth, duck season, rabbit season, duck seasoning, and rabbit seasoning are my favorite Looney Tunes cartoons. Chuck Jones, hilarious every time. I know I have watched every Looney Tune cartoon from the early Bosco and Honey cartoons, if you even know what those are, all the way through everything made up through about Tiny Toon Adventures. I have watched every single one. I can look at a cartoon and know who the director is without even seeing the director's name. Chuck Jones, absolutely, hands down, my favorite director of all of them. Just really, really funny guy, and knew how to do sight gags and set them up and have them work. You know, and not just, he wouldn't just have a character pushing the button on and off. That would have been dumb. He would have set something up that made sense. Drop True says classical music is timeless. Yes, I think that's partly why they did it. What do you say is current in terms of pop music in the 24th century? You know, what, I mean, does that mean you come up with something radically different than what we have now in terms of popular music? What's it going to sound like? Will it even appeal to your viewers? Going with something like classical is pretty safe, you know. Marshall says, best line in movies is from My Favorite Year by Peter O'Toole's character, Alan Swan. Dying is easy. Comedy is hard. Another one of my favorite lines from that same one is, I am not an actor. I'm a movie star. You know, good line. If you know about Hollywood in that time and place, yeah, that's kind of almost right. Yeah, I am not an actor. I'm a movie star. Marcel says, Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. A classic, also featured on Babylon 5 in Garibaldi's quarters. Yes, absolutely a classic. I've got, I show this from time to time when I'm going to do people's birthdays. Let's just see a brilliant moment by Chuck Jones setting it up so that it works.
The thing from another world, you?
Oh, thank you.
I play that when people have birthdays. So, hey, what the hell? Just for kicks again, so we can catch it, because unfortunately the damn thing froze a little bit on me there. Let's run it past one more time, because yesterday was the birthday of Gene Roddenberry. So we'll give him a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, you thing from another world, you.
Oh, thank you.
Chuck Jones, everybody. Chuck Jones. Round of applause for Chuck Jones. There's a guy who knew how to set up a joke and make it funny. Happy birthday, you thing from another world, you. Love that line. Chuck Jones. That was just Chuck Jones. Yeah, Britney Spears, Rihanna, Beyonce, etc. will not survive to the 23rd century. I think you could make a case, you know, maybe something like the Beatles, Elvis Presley, they might survive. You know, certainly they'd be called like classics or something like that by then. But yeah, there's, God, you know, anything that we've got right now for pop music, people that will not be remembered 50 years from now, much less 400. So, you know, I don't think that you even know why you I don't think it would be safe for them to even get into what current pop music would sound like in the 24th century. It might be something so radically different. If you were going to do it, I would have to say, okay, well, it's got to be totally different than today's pop music. It's got to use something very, very different. And it's got to age well, because maybe these people will be watching this stuff 50 years from now. You don't want it to be like Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers, where they had these dance numbers that were awfully disco. You don't want it to age like that. So what do? Well, okay, let's go with classical music. That will age fine. Classical music always ages fine. And it gives the impression, too, that you're dealing with characters who are a little more intelligent. These are people who a little more highbrow. And that's fine, in terms of that. And now I will know why you didn't tell anyone that your birthday was 21 days ago. Well, happy birthday, you thing from another world, you. Rush, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, yes, maybe, yeah. Hard to tell what's going to last very long, Pink Floyd and Dire Straits will survive? Possibly, yes. That's certainly possible. Again, you're looking at people right now who have certainly survived the test of time from most of my lifetime. You get into Elvis, Beatles, they predate me just a little bit. There's others from previous periods who are famous jazz musicians, famous rock and roll ones who are considered influential. They'll probably survive. But we've got a lot of time between us and then, and a lot of different musical styles. I don't honestly think hip hop or rap will survive. I really don't. I think that those are half music. Sue me. I think they're half music. And I don't think they'll survive. I don't think they'll be, they've been around for longer than I would have expected. But I don't think they'll survive long term. I don't think they will. Anyway, today's Lower Decks, just dumb from the get-go. They're telling us here that we have a ship full of incompetents who can't handle a normal level of workload, and the only one who can tells the captain that everybody else is kind of sloughing off. Well, okay, there's sort of a lesson to be had here, and I saw it coming a million miles away. You can't over-push your subordinates, okay? But the fact that we have this one character who is the only one that's competent, that you can give him this stuff, and he will get it done in time, and he is made to look bad the entire episode. Well, if you're going to do a show about a crew and a ship that's kind of second rate, that you don't put there on the front lines, that's fine. But at some point, you got to take the one guy who knows what he's doing, recognize it, and transfer him to the Enterprise. He does not belong here. And yet he is constantly being made fun of precisely because he can do his job well. And that's not funny. And a lot of it feels like you're getting more into there is no escaping the woke, because you have this main character, Mariner, who's a complete screw-up, trying to constantly make this guy look bad, even though he's the one that can actually do real work. And then we got Mariner getting the hots for the XO of the ship, and disobeying his orders, and him at the end basically saying he could have her drawn up on charges but doesn't, and then she flips out about other things. Not funny and illogical, right? If you say that, okay, I'm not going to put you up on charges, but you're going to have to do these things, you could do some grumbling about it, but you don't flip out the way that she does, and it's not funny. It's not set up in a way that makes it funny. This Chuck Jones, you guys ain't. I'm sorry. And so much of these episodes is just referencing old Star Trek. You'll hear like, under the breath. I think this week we had somebody sort of humming the Star Trek: The Next Generation, actually Star Trek: The Motion Picture theme, dun, 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 just humming it under their breath, referencing Kirk again, the millionth time. Reference. And I think funny means constantly fast-paced, rapid-fire, doing all this stuff. Fast-paced, rapid-fire can be funny, But that's all it is constant rapid-fire, fast-paced stuff. It doesn't give you a chance to laugh, even if it's set up well, which it never is. It's not funny, guys. I'm sorry. I'd be happy with it if it was funny. I'm cool with a sitcom. I'm cool with an animated sitcom if it's funny. It's not funny. Louis Armstrong, Buddy Rich Orchestra, Sinatra. Yeah, very probably Marshall. My opinion, why is the comedy so fast-paced? Because they think that's what's funny. They think fast is funny, so they do fast. Hellbell, the opening credits tell the story better than anything else. It's a ship full of inept people. Again, which I wouldn't have a problem with if it was funny. It's like they're trying to do, in a way, kind of like they're trying to do something like Futurama. Except that Futurama sets up jokes. Even when they have sight gags, the one that always comes to my mind was they canceled the show and then years later brought it back, and they made a gag out of it. They say, oh, we were canceled by those idiots at the Fox Network. Fox. And Leela has a line that she says, what about us and our many fans? Well, that's illogical for somebody to say in that context, except that right behind her, they have a whole bunch of fans blowing. Okay, that's funny. You have to set it up so that it works. An inept ship, I'm totally down with. It's just that the jokes fall flat. It doesn't work. It isn't funny. It just isn't funny. I'm having more fun talking about the funny stuff in Futurama than I am this. It's not music if they don't play instruments. The only music rappers play is this junk. That's right. That's why I don't think it's really going to survive that long. Let's see. Sometimes in a dress now. Transvestism. Yeah, it depends. In the Marvin the Martian click, there was time to laugh. Dynamite. Bang. Spin. Nasty look. Chuckle. It was set up. Happy beep beep birthday, you thing from another world, you. Hand him the dynamite. He thinks it's a candle. Oh, thank you. Boom. It's timing. Happy beep beep birthday, you thing from another world, you. A funny line to start with. Oh, thank you for the dynamite you gave me. Boom. And then a look. Dun, 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 dun. It's timing. It's something that Steve Martin used to do in his old stand-up routines. Of course, the biggest thing is something they can't teach you in comedy. It's all about timing. I'm sorry, timing. So it's timing. It's setting the joke up to be funny, and they just don't work at it. It's just constant rapid fire. You see stuff in the background happening all the time. When things are going crazy, and then it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't work. I remember the time that I almost chuckled, and it was when the aliens had boarded the ship and they were spraying the ship with graffiti. And one character whose name I forget, the only one who knows how to do his job right, gets out a phaser and starts, scraping it off. I almost laughed there, except that the immediate thing that then happened was one of the aliens attacked him and he fended them off with ease. I'm like, really? So if anybody on the ship knew what the hell they were doing, if they were even remotely competent, they'd be able to get rid of these boarders, really? It took all the funny out of it, what little there was. High-speed comedy can work. Look at Who's on First. Yes, but you have enough time to realize the joke is playing not against the audience, but to the stand. Yeah, it can work. It's just that they aren't doing it that works. I can go on at length about this. It's to me, the ultimate thing is it's not funny. It's just not funny. It is non-comedy for the most part. It is, you feel worse after the joke was told. It is non-comedy. Hat tip, Rich Evans, you God, You can go on at length. There's no moment in there at which I sat and chuckled for a moment, even for a moment. And I'm totally down with this notion of a less than competent crew. I'm okay with that. It's just that it isn't funny the way that they're doing it. It's just not funny. You got to set the jokes up. You have to have the timing. You have to have, give the audience a chance to see. Here's how jokes work mechanically, and I can't do it. I can't just make up a joke, but I can tell you mechanically how it works. You set things up so that the audience will figure out the punchline to the joke just before it comes, right? It's not just this rapid fire, look, punchline. It is, we set things up, and then you figure it out just before the punchline happens. That will be when it's funny. And that's kind of mechanically how good comedy works. You've got this build up, and you've set the joke up, and it's such that the audience can figure out what the punchline is just before it comes, so that then they laugh. And it's not funny. They're not doing any of that, just not doing it. Let's see. Drop 2 says Chuck Jones was also a great illustrator and changed the look of Bugs and Daffy in his cartoon. Absolutely, yeah. He's very much responsible for the change in Daffy Duck's. Again, this is somebody who's watched these all the way back for more than I guess it's close to like 110 years now. But going all the way back, he was very much responsible for the change, particularly in Daffy Duck's character. When Daffy first started, he was just crazy, bouncing all over the place. But when it got to, Chuck Jones could do things like, let's try that again. It's not pronoun trouble. It's not he doesn't have to shoot me now. It's he doesn't have to shoot you now. Well, I say he does have to shoot me now. So shoot me now. And it changed the nature of the character. And he did that also with Bugs. Changed his look. Changed some of the stuff that he did. Bugs became a little bit more intelligent, I guess is the best way to describe it. Real comedy has left us. Yes, shows like Sanford and Son, All in the Family, and The Jeffersons. Some of those, Sanford and Son, I've watched, and a couple of times, they just don't age well. Some of those were really excellent in their time period, but don't necessarily age well. It depends on what it is. But some of them don't. But things like All in the Family and The Jeffersons, yeah, those age pretty well. Drax not understanding the metaphor when talking about Guardians of the Galaxy itself is not funny, but Batista's characterizations and lines make it funny many, many times. The setup makes multiple gags work, usually at the worst time. Yeah. It's setup, it's payoff, it's we knowing what the punchline's probably going to be just moments before it happens, technically. All in the Family was in the U.S. version, was the U.S. version of British Till Death Do Us Part. Sanford and Son was the U.S. version of British Steptoe and Son. Yeah, I've watched a couple of episodes of Steptoe and Son. I know for a fact you're exactly right. It's an Americanized version of that, but it also has a very much Red Fox's kind of stamp of humor on it. If you're familiar with, I watched some of Red Fox's stand-up, and it's got very much his stamp on it. It's an Americanized version of it, but yeah, it definitely has it definitely owes what it is to the British versions, no question. Favorite sitcom of all time, says Super Cruiser 363, Married with Children. One of my many vices is reactors on YouTube, people who react to things. There are people out there who put together, things like Al Bundy's best chicken jokes, which was always him and Marcy, Al Bundy's fighting, Al Bundy's shoe store jokes, where he'll insult the overweight women at his shoe store. And then you have people which are funny in themselves. You could never make that show today. The woke would never let you make that show today. But they have people who react to them. And those are usually pretty funny because they generally tend to be post-millennials who are reacting to them, who are seeing this stuff, A, for the first time, and B, can't believe that this sort of humor ever existed, on network television. Because they could make it today. The woke would not allow them to make it today. It's just crazy. But yeah, Married with Children, definitely one of my favorite shows. And that one actually ages pretty well because you can always come up with very funny ways to describe overweight people. That's just the way it is, especially with Al, where he would be creative. It was never the same put down twice. one of the ones where he's I think it's a very large woman in a red dress who's saying, she says, I'm going to take my business elsewhere, turns around, leans over to pick up something, and her little kid says, I want a balloon. And Al says, you've already got one. It's stuff like that. How dare you say that to my face? Well, I'd say it to your back, but my car's only got half a tank of gas. You couldn't make that show today. I'd be like, oh, you can't make fun of the overweight. Guess what, guys? Been putting on a little poundage. You can make fun of me if you want. I don't care. You have to be able to laugh at yourself, and that's one thing that the woke cannot do. The woke cannot laugh at themselves. It's impossible. So, Katie's voice is great, excellent in Futurama. Yes, I like Katie Seagal very much. I just in general like her. I think she's a really beautiful woman in general, but she works so well as Peggy Bundy. She has certain mannerisms, the hair, the clothes that she wears, that really, really work with that character. So she's very funny, and also in Futurama, great voice actress when it comes to doing that character. I mean, it's not a huge stretch from her own natural voice, but it's perfect for everything that she does. So. But yes, married with children. So that'll be my rant on Star Trek Lower Decks. Looks like I got, a little over half an hour, maybe 40 minutes to go here. Let me see if I have anything else that I have scheduled to talk about. Not really. But we can still talk. Marshall says, the woke doesn't understand humor, which is why your best attack vector is to laugh at them and never, ever explain why. Yeah, that is true. They have no sense of humor. They cannot understand comedy, which probably is why Lower Decks falls generally so flat. It's, you're dealing with Hollywood. Hollywood is filled with the woke. And so the woke are making this. They don't understand humor, so they can't make it funny. It's like watching the left meme. The left cannot meme. I have marketing memes. I make memes from time to time that I hope are funny, that have my show logo and the website URL on it. I shoot those out into the world with the hope that they will be picked up. I think I've got 3 that are pretty good now. It is Commodore Decker. 3 shots of Commodore Decker from the Doomsday Machine, if you're familiar with that episode of Star Trek. He's a little bit on the scenery chewing side from time to time. It works for the episode, but he still chews that scenery once or twice. And I've got 3 different shots of him. One where I have as a caption, watching Star Trek Discovery, and he's like, and then there's one watching Star Trek Picard, and he's like, and then one that's watching Star Trek Lower Decks, and he's just kind of, and I think that one's funny and tends to work. I shotgun those out when I think I've got them. But I think I can meme at least a little, or at least try to, because I have a sense of humor. The left, man, they can't meme. I wish I could show you. I mentioned early on that I had a thing going back and forth with a guy who baited me into attempting to have some kind of conversation with him on a George Takei thread on Twitter. It's a pointless waste of time because they won't believe you when you tell them that you're not a Trump supporter. They can't get wrap their minds around the fact that there might be more than 2 positions to any given argument. If you aren't the Democrat, you are a Trump supporter, period. But he shot some memes at me that were just like, this is supposed to, it was like, memes that were stick figures saying something. I was like, you think this is a zinger, do you? I think this is bazinga on this. This is the least creative thing you could have thrown me. Here's one of my memes. Here's one of my marketing memes. Have a look at that. What do you think? This is something I spent a little bit of time on, and I put my rubber stamped my logo on it. I think it fits the situation we're talking about here now. Isn't that a little nicer looking? Because the left can't meme. They have no sense of humor. They cannot meme. Let's see. Does Katie have a Brooklyn accent in Married with Children, or is it New Jersey? She doesn't really have much of an accent at all. It's more of a general American with a bit of a whine to it. You know, she whines a lot. It's a little just kind of a whine. Nobody on that show actually has a Chicago accent. Sometimes they'll have secondary, tertiary characters that'll come off with a slight Chicago accent. Because there is an accent in Chicago. There's an accent in Chicago. It's not as overblown as when they are talking about it for on Saturday Night Live. It was always famous for the Bears, but they do have something of an accent. It's Chicago. It's not Chicago, which is how I pronounce it. Chicago. You do get a slight, change in terms of how they do some of the diphthongs and stuff like that. But there's a slight dialect to Chicago, so you never really hear a Chicago dialect on there. It's general American that's combined with sort of a whine. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily anything having to do with anything New York in any way. Robert just says, I hated the accent of Fran Drescher in The Nanny. You just want to strangle her. What accent is that meant to be? Yeah, it's some, I don't know for sure which it is. It's Bronx or Brooklyn. But that's actually Fran Drescher's real voice. That is not her acting. That is what Fran Drescher sounds like in real life. So, yeah, that's just her. Robert 2 says, comedy is all about timing. You got to go. You go out. You go and cut down the largest tree in the forest with a herring. Delivery is everything. Yeah, it's timing is everything. Absolutely. Supercrude 63. Can you imagine what the woke would think of the late great Stan Kinison? Oh my God, it makes me laugh thinking about it. Yeah, I don't know what they'd think of him now. It was one of the darlings of the left at the time. But, another guy, why am I blanking on his name? I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. He's a stand-up comedian more than anything else. He starred in The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, a really terrible movie. Somebody tell me the name of the guy I'm thinking about. Because he could not get a job today. He was so politically incorrect. He could never get a job today. Incredibly popular when I was in college, but could never today get a gig. He would never be able to do it. And there's a lot of stand-up comics that are so politically incorrect. I'm surprised that Bill. I'm seeing a lot of people reacting to his stuff now. Damn it, I'm not remembering his name. Bill Burr. I'm surprised he gets gigs. I guess that it's just that he qualifies what he talks about sometimes enough that it lets him get a pass. Or maybe he's just such a big draw. That might tell you guys something. The fact that Bill Burr can be pretty politically incorrect and still make enough money that you'll overlook it. Maybe that tells you something about what people want to see. George Carlin, great stand-up, so-so in films. Yeah, for the most part. I think that's probably right. He wasn't a great film actor or anything like that. Brilliant stand-up comic, no question. I first got my attention when I first heard the 7 deadly words that you can't see on television. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Those are the deadly 7. Those are the ones that'll warp your mind, destroy your soul, and keep America from winning the war. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. And he got to my attention right there. Of course, I was in junior high at the time that I first heard that. But his comedy was generally very highbrow, and nothing was sacred. He would go after things that I like, but I could let him go because he was going after everything. So great comic, very missed. Obviously, very, very influential on many, many stand-up comics who came after him. I'm unclear that if a guy like him came out today, that he'd be able to get a gig. The woke would probably find fault with him where they don't find fault with him now because of how long his longevity was, how long his career was. He went from the 60s all the way up until he died, in the 2010s. It wasn't that long ago. At least I don't think so. And now we can't say Crown disease. Yes, we can't talk about that virus that I gave the statistics for my county here earlier on in the show. Yeah. No. The woke have no sense of comedy whatsoever. Everything is terrible. Everything is serious. Everything has fault. Everything is a victim. And you can't laugh at any of it. And so Marshall said, best thing to do with them, laugh and don't tell them why. Yeah, Drop a Clue says, it's a big club and you ain't in it. Yeah. And that was one of his, he was generally saying that in terms of who actually runs things, it's a big club and you ain't in it. You're not the one who gets to call the shots, not really. Yeah, Carlin was great. Carlin was a great comic. If this show did nothing but, if like Lower Decks did nothing but, say like social commentary the way that Carlin did it, I think that could work, But the way they're doing it, I think it's a show being made by the woke. And so they have no sense of comedy, so they can't make comedy. All they have is fast-paced stuff that's sight gags that don't make a lot of sense, combined with constant references to other Star Trek, just to prove that they handed to them. They've watched everything. I was impressed. Last week they had a Vendorian, which was an alien that you saw one time in Star Trek, the animated series. If you're watching Star Trek, the animated series now, the Vendorian is in... not remembering the name of the episode. Somebody out there probably know. But the Vendorian did appear in Star Trek, the animated series. It was, if you're somebody like me who's watching it, I went, oh, that's kind of nice. But that's all this show is. It's bang, 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 bang. Comedy doesn't make a lot of sense. Combined with bang, 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 we're going to make references to other Star Trek. Well, cute, but, this is another one of my memes. Star Trek Lower Decks. Lower Decks is actually, what is it? What do they call it? Fan service, the animated series. That's really what it is. Just let's reference everything back for fans. And it's not funny. Let's see. Clip of Carlin ripping on politicians with all your freedom, etc. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was in many ways, he was a liberal. In many ways, he was a libertarian. It varied. But, yeah, he talks about that, too. I sent a link to the Chicago Scanners. You missed that. What was happening? Well, the Chicago Scanners, a couple of weeks ago, I think. Now we're into our second week. Chicago went nuts because there was a guy who the cops had chased down an alley. He was carrying a gun. Cops chased him down an alley. He turned, and it was a dead end. He turned, fired at them. They returned fire. They hit him, not killing him. He hit them, not killing them. Everybody went to the hospital. And then local agitators started screaming about how the cops had just killed another innocent black man. I don't even know what his race was, and it doesn't matter. When you're out with the Chicago cops and you start shooting at them, what do you expect is going to happen? The Chicago PD is not known for its extraordinary restraint. And, you start shooting at them, what do you think's going to happen? But they've now gone into 2 straight weeks or so, coming up on 2 weeks, I think this Sunday, of riots. They have destroyed parts of what's called the Miracle Mile, which is along Michigan Avenue. It is some of the most expensive and high-end stores. It's kind of like the, what am I blanking on the name here? Rodeo Drive of Chicago. The Miracle Mile is kind of like that. They destroyed it. They have destroyed all kinds of stuff in the area that's called the Loop, which is where some of the tallest buildings and many businesses and financial district and all that. They've moved out into the suburbs and have destroyed some of that. It's basically 2 weeks worth of rioting. On any given night, you'll hear something going on the Chicago PD frequencies. But if you've got scanner radio like I do, it will notify you after the listener threshold goes to about 2,000. And when that happens, there's something really interesting going on. And when it hits up that high, all that's happened for the last 2 weeks, anytime I've gotten it, usually it's been past midnight, and it just means that they've started going nuts. It's biggest on Friday and Saturday nights, not surprisingly. That's when they seem to get the drunkest or the highest, and then they go nuts. But that's all that's really happening. They have had continuous riots for a couple of weeks. You can see it. If you watch some news programs, local news programs, WGN, people like that, you can see them actually reporting on it because they have no freaking choice. Because what they did there in an effort to fight it was they raised the bridges over the Chicago River, which never happens. Occasionally they'll raise a bridge when they have a large boat coming through. Chicago River kind of bisects a big chunk of Chicago. There's the area that's called a loop, and the loop is bounded by elevated train tracks, and it's really sort of the central part of what you'd consider, the biggest financial districts and things like that. I don't know what they call it now. It used to be the Sears Tower. It's the only thing I can think of to call it. Is just outside the loop. So it's this area there. Then around that, you have Lake Michigan on one end. Past the loop, you have Lake Michigan on one side. Let's see if I can do this in a way that makes sense. Lake Michigan on one side. The loop is like here. Lake Michigan is over here. And then the Chicago River comes from the southern end and goes up outside the loop, right? And then off into parts unknown for a ways. But they have to have these bridges across at various major thoroughfares, Michigan Avenue, Clark Street, Lakeshore Drive, etc. They have these big suspension, open and closed bridges like you see in, some movies and stuff that take place there. In order to curb some of the rioting, they opened all the bridges. So there was no way to get across them. Now you could, there's a couple of bridges you couldn't take down. You'd have to go way far out of your way to get around. But that was the point. They had to open up all those bridges. That's bad. When I lived and worked there, I never saw that happen. That never happened. The longest they had a bridge up for any length of time was, I think, Clark Street, because they were renovating the street. And they had to have the bridge up because if they didn't, morons would cross into where they were renovating the thing. So they just stopped it by raising the bridge. But you didn't ever see them just raise those bridges as a preventative measure to stop the rioters on one side of the river or not of the other. That's how bad it is. And it's ongoing. Super Crew 63 says Carlin is the master of playing on words. Absolutely. Drop Truth says I heard a woke joke some time ago. Didn't understand it at all. It used words like cis, etc. Utter nonsense. Yes. Jeanette says my daughter told me I am not cis. Can't remember what it means, but I told her thank you. Let's see. It means you're cis actually means I'm a cisgendered male. That means that I identify as male. I am a heterosexual white male. I think cis can also apply to women, heterosexual white women. But it's largely, William Shatner has that one right. He got into it with some woke nonsense idiots when he said, I've only ever heard cis used as a pejorative, as an insult. And yeah, that's the only way I've ever heard it. So, when somebody says, when I say something and somebody wants to, when woke wants to dismiss me, they say, oh, just a cisgendered male. I've never heard it used as something just as a descriptor. I've only ever heard it used and I have used the woke. I've heard them use it as an apology. Some white guy will say, well, I'm cisgendered. I've heard that. PC jokes. If con is the opposite of pro, then Congress is the opposite of progress. Well, I think that's probably true regardless. No man's wallet is safe when Congress is in session. Drop Truth says, question, have I heard about McDonald's new Obama value meal? Answer, order anything you like, and the guy behind you has to pay for it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good joke. It doesn't have to be Obama. Yeah. Anybody, you could say that about the Bernie value meal, the Ocasio-Cortez value meal. Anybody on the left that works for. Anything, order anything you like, and the guy behind you has to pay for it. Absolutely. Oh, man. Yeah, it's crazy. And like I say, biggest thing is the woke have absolutely no sense of humor. None at all. And, maybe that's why they think they're nailing it with the Democratic National Convention. Maybe they think they're actually nailing that. I don't know. As I said at the beginning, it's hard for me to imagine. It's hard for me as a performer, as a former actor, to watch that and do anything except go, oh, I am so uncomfortable. I feel embarrassed for the people on the screen. I can't watch this anymore. And I have to click away. It makes me too uncomfortable. It really does. I'm uncomfortable watching that. And I have to wonder, okay, does the left think that they're killing it with this junk because they have no sense of humor? Maybe you need a sense of humor to be able to look at something and go, oh, God, I'm so embarrassed for you. Maybe you have to have a sense of humor in order to do that. And completely lacking a sense of humor, they think that they're killing it. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's going on. They have no sense of humor, and so they can't feel the embarrassment for the people who are the performers on the stage. Maybe that's just it. They don't have a sense of humor, and so cannot feel that embarrassment. Because there's good, there's so bad it's good, and then there's so bad that you feel bad for the performers. You feel bad for the people who are doing this. And that's where they're at. Maybe you have to have the sense of humor. Maybe they can't tell if something's, can't tell if something's funny. They can't really tell something so bad it's good. I wonder what happens when you throw Plan 9 from outer space at them. Do they laugh at it? That would be a really interesting thing. Somebody go out there and get a doctorate by showing so bad it's good movies to people on the left to see if they laugh. And get them in groups, because so bad it's good movies are best when it's in groups. Because if you're groups of friends, you just sit there and laugh at so bad it's good movies. Do they laugh at them? Do they think that there are movies that are so bad they're good? I mean, would they watch Glenn or Glenda, one of the worst so bad it's good movies ever made by the worst so bad it's good movie director, Ed Wood? Would they laugh? I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe they think they're rocking with this because they just have no sense of humor, and so therefore cannot feel the cringe and the embarrassment involved here. I don't know. Drop 2 says, my favorite political joke: politicians and diapers have one thing in common. They should both be changed regularly and for the same reason. Yeah. Jeanette says, why do politicians have one more brain cell than horses? So they don't make a mess in the parade. Drop of Truth says, I cringe every time I watch the Americans episode of Faulty Towers. It's so well acted and well written and acted. I haven't seen enough Faulty Towers to be able to tell you. I was more into that show back when it was first airing, but I don't remember enough about it, other than John Cleese was just fantastically funny, as he generally is. Anytime he gets into any kind of comedy, he's great. He's great in general. He's done some more straight stuff that is really funny. Not really funny, but, effective. Not incredibly straight. I don't think I've seen him in anything. One in Silverado, when he plays that sheriff. He's got a couple of funny lines in there where he says, yes, I am not from around all these here parts. Funny line, but he's got another one, this isn't the edge of our jurisdiction, and the guy's shooting at him and says, today our jurisdiction ends here. Good funny lines, but he's otherwise straight, and it works. But just about anything he's in, you can guarantee that if it's intended to be funny, it's going to be damn funny with him. Would SJWs laugh at the film Airplane? I don't know. Another thing you could show them, another great comedy. And again, that one's great comedy because it's a lot of sight gags. It's a lot of, general poking fun at the seriousness of it. But it works because the actors involved know that they have to take it dead seriously. You know, one of the things that happened with Leslie Nielsen was he made his name as a comedic actor because of his performance in Airplane. Unfortunately, what happened to him after that, after about the third Police Squad movie, his performance changed, and he started acting like he was funny. The difference here, I'm not quite sure how to explain it. He's in Airplane, he's absolutely dead serious the whole time. You know, he'll get stuff fed to him like, how long until we can land? Well, that's hard to say. Well, I can't tell you. It's okay. You can tell me I'm a doctor. No, I mean, I'm not sure. You're not sure that, you know, I've forgotten exactly what the exchange is. You're not sure that I'm a doctor? No, or, you know, things like that. But it's absolutely deadpan serious between them. The joke is that it's deadpan serious between them. When he got back into about the third Naked Gun movie and movies he made after that were in a similar sort of genre, he did not play it deadpan serious. And so it wasn't quite as funny. He started playing it as if he knew it was going to be funny. And that's not where the humor comes from. In that, it's deadpan serious, you know. There's a scene like one of the guys says, well, let's got to face up to some facts. He's got sunglasses on. Let's face up to some facts. Pulls off one. He's got another pair of sunglasses into it. But he's playing it dead serious, you know. Or when the captain says he's taking these calls and he says, well, I'll take ham on 5, hold the mail. You know, and it's because he's playing it deadpan serious. And that's how that's funny. It's certainly not the way it is. You could do that with Star Trek Lower Decks if you wanted to. You could make the jokes be about something where they're absolutely deadpan serious, even though the lines that they're saying are stupid as hell. You know. Supergirl 63 says, yes, they'd laugh at it unless they're dead. Well, again, I'm not quite sure. Some of them are brain dead. They have no sense of humor at all. I don't know what they laugh at. Drop of Juice says, Basil, there's much butter on those trays. Manuel. K. Basil, there's too much butter on those trays. Manuel. No, Mr. Faulty, not on those trays. Uno, dos, tres. Yeah. yeah. Again, stuff you got to play straight, you know. The joke is the language, but it's also that both of the characters are serious about what they're saying. There's too much on those trays. Trays? No, there's not much trays. And they're both totally serious. That's part of what makes the comedy, is being serious about it, playing it serious as if it's a serious conversation between you, you know. And as I say, what happened with Leslie Nielsen towards the end of his career is he started taking stuff that should have been played deadpan straight and instead went off. Hard for me to come up with a specific line where he did that, but you know, he should. There's places, if you watch like Naked Gun 33 and a third, where he's a little bit too much. You know, he's not playing it as straight as he really needed to. So. But whether or not the woke would laugh at that, I don't know. I don't know what they laugh at. I really don't. I don't know if they ever laugh at anything. You know, maybe that's part of the biggest problem is they got a stick up their ass and they can't laugh at anything. You have to be able to ultimately laugh at yourself. You know, God, how to get personal about this? I was at a conference with a bunch of other IT guys from the place that I worked. If you ever see me with a T-shirt or something like that, you may notice that these stick out just a little bit. It's been like that my whole life. And they made a joke about it. And I think they were worried for about 5 seconds that I wouldn't take it as intended as a joke, and I just laughed. You got to be able to laugh at yourself. You know, if you can't laugh at yourself, you can't laugh at anything else. And I don't know what they laugh at. I have no freaking clue what, if anything, they actually laugh at. Well, I'll tell you what, it's about 10 till. I think I'm going to let this go because my back is starting to kill me. As often happens with these live streams, I'm sitting up straight for a long period of time. So, I would have to say thank you very much for being on. Always love my audience. Do drop back again next week at this same bat time and same back channel. But that is all that I've got to say about that. Real quick here, Andrew Sachs, who played Manuel, is a renowned theater actor. He's brilliant. Fawlty Towers was his first comedic role. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I need to go back watch some Fawlty Towers. It's been a while since I've seen it. However, I would love to keep this conversation going after where I drop off, so please do leave your comments, questions, and nasty remarks. I'll do my best to respond to you. So thanks for watching, and please consider donating to the Shields Up Nichelle Nichols GoFundMe at gofundme.com/f/shields-up-Nichelle-Nichols, link in my description box. And that's all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.